I was there and I know it happened. I know what I was saying. I want to see your guys' reaction. What you guys have questions. I know some of you guys have several questions, and just really open the floor up to you guys, and let us kind of self-manage it.
Well, I have a few questions that I've written down, but just as a summary and your feel about the overall meeting that you had, my question is how confident you are on EIP 1559, because towards the end there, it's not like, you know, you were in agreement that 1559 was a positive thing for the overall ecosystem, but that the compromise, you know, how confident are you that the compromise is going to be implemented, or how confident are you as a whole with today's meeting?
It's a good question. So going in this originally, when you know, I made the first video about the burn and saying that this is a horrible idea, you're going to impact a lot of folks, and it's another arbitrary just hit, you know, slashing minors, you know, second-class citizen kind of issue. And it's kind of pivoted as I've learned more about the features that are part of 1559, that there are some good features that are needed. I'm still super concerned with the fact that it doesn't really address the transaction issue as a whole, where it's still going to be ballooning. I would like to see a lot more effort. And I know this has been baked in for a long time because we have really long monolithic builds with Ethereum, unfortunately, where it takes like years to implement stuff. But if they would have spent a little more time focusing on like L2 DeFi transaction states, like roll-ups, things that would allow people to have some other opportunity costs there. Now, knowing what we know now, I mean, I guess it's one of those things where I'm if they would have went all transactions on DeFi and we would have never seen that money, we wouldn't have known what we're missing. Now that we're where we're at, it's either a slash and burn, or is there an option where there's hardly any transaction fees and the user experience is better? I would have more liked to have seen, if those were two roads that we had to deal with, I would have rather said, you know, you don't need to burn it. Like, having a good user experience would be paramount. But I think that walking into that meeting pretty close to just the opening, I knew that it was like, okay, that mind is already made up. So now what's the discussion today? I didn't want to belabor on a point that was just wasting everybody's time and nobody wanted to hear in that room. And I wanted to focus really on what the more existential risk is in those scenarios. And the folks that were able to get into the mining scenario, which isn't perfect, but there is a real existential issue if you have a descending price and high transaction volumes, because we're going to hit a wall. And like, let's say July, that, you know, it could be 6 ETH per block at that point in time. There are a lot of transactions, because transactions are going to be cheaper. That was one point that I didn't really talk to, is that it's okay that if ETH drops down to 300 and more people are using DeFi, like, our yields would be very high. You could have a 6 to 10 ETH block reward, you know, like the transaction being 8 of that if the prices are 300. At 1800, it gets real expensive. But if you're looking at $80 prices, $90 prices for ETH, because ETH's price came down and there's still a lot of activity on DeFi, and we're sitting in June or July, and now they slash those prices, we're going to go from like an 8 block reward down to 2 with low prices. You're going to have 700 terahash possibly drop all the way down to like 185 terahash. And that's the part that I'm talking, that I wanted to make sure that I was making the point on. I don't think it articulated as well, because even right now, I've just used like 2 minutes explaining that. And we just didn't have that time there to explain that. But that's really kind of where my mind was at, but I couldn't get it out there in that time.
So I wanted to start with two things, if you guys don't mind, because I know these questions are happening all the time, and that's a timeline of when these types of things are happening. And I wanted to get a confirmation from you, Bits, on this. One would be, we're looking at EIP 1559 starting in July, thereabouts. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's, I mean, so London is the hard fork. They have to, that's like a hard date. I think it was originally targeted for June. I think Tim today said the call next week, they're going to kind of more talk towards like July, but it has to happen no matter what. Not EIP 1555, but they have to have a hard fork because
London,
the Ice Age, because the Ice Age will just essentially freeze everything because difficulty's not let everybody know that's watching. If Ice Age kicks off, it decouples the mining hash rate and the difficulty from the network, where now it's predicated on this artificial number that just inflates the difficulty, not pegged to the hash rate, which means the net of it is 15-second block times go up to like maybe 30 seconds. So if you're waiting for transactions and stuff, it's just bad news. They don't want to do that. They've already felt that a couple times now in Ethereum. So they have to hard fork in July. It's just, is EIP 1559 going to be included or not?
Got it. And then there was one more thing, and that was the timeline on ETH 2.0, which I felt like we got a little bit of an answer on, which was a couple of years. Basically, in a couple of years, that gap will be zero. Quote from AFTAB, or sorry, I probably mispronounced that, but I was trying to copy it down off of the Zoom call. So are we looking at a couple of years for ETH 2.0?
I mean, I think right now their current schedule, the most aggressive they could go, and I know Vitalik's came out a couple times and said, well, worst case, if we have an attack vector, we'll just, fork early. And those are cool words, but I don't think they actually have the implementation plan. It's kind of like having the known full state. You already have a chain stood up, but they have no way right now, at least written out. It's probably in a couple people's heads, and it's the way a lot of engineering works in software development, but it hasn't really went through its iterations to figure it out on paper of how, and then the coordination that's going to be required with regards to how they're going to handle, change of state of contracts. This is stuff that I've asked for a long time. Like, what's your guys' implementation plan? It's not that I don't have confidence that you'll get to it. It's just literally like I still haven't figured out how they're going to stop things in flight. I know how I would do it from like building a data center, and I've been part of several large migrations. I understand that kind of there's different ways to do it. There's flipping a switch. There's sunsetting certain processes where you have kind of a hybrid model. I mean, there's different ways for them to implement. I've been curious of how they're going to do that. I think based on their current scheduling, and yes, there are two separate independent teams, but those things come crashing together. I can't imagine it happen any earlier than a year from right now. And I bet I'm figuring their best case is kind of a hybrid model in between that year and that second year, with that second year being, and unless something completely changes on their current cadence.
Yeah,
but, I mean,
I just wanted to make sure we got those two out of the way right off the bat, because that's what I was able to extrapolate timeline wise out of there. And then finally, and this is going to be a point of contention for a lot of people, but I felt like they were more talking down to miners than anything else in the call.
Oh yeah.
So
Seconded.
My biggest issues, I have quotes here through all of them, and I don't know how much of it that I want to bring up, but did you at any time feel like that kind of political issue going on more than actually addressing the issue? Because I didn't hear anybody actually fully explain or address your concerns.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it was there's a couple elements to it. I think there's an opinion, a formed opinion of just mining in general, and it could be from a whole bunch of different angles of they've seen what's happened to other networks and the pain. And mind you, like the Ethereum Classic and Ethereum communities, I mean, why they split, they still know each other. I mean, they all worked on stuff by and large together at one point, and I think they feel the pain, the direct messaging problem with each other of what's happened when a network gets attacked, and the miners have kind of a four-letter word to some of them, and I think that was coming out with some of it, like, hey, we only care about holders, investors, and the app development community and the value proposition folks. Mining is just something that just occurs. It's again, that second class citizen kind of, you're looking down on that thing.
And there seemed to be a sentiment that we don't use DeFi or anything along those lines. Like, where is that coming from?
Matt, I'm gonna push back on that. Our last group call, when I mentioned that you pushed back pretty hard and said that you intend to mine and sell, and then immediately followed up with a video that is your plan for right now.
I do. That is my plan. But I also have tutorials on using DeFi. Right. I was pushing it. And I've been going over it, and I'm not ignoring that as being a valid form. And I've even mentioned in those videos that currently Ethereum offers the most amount of valid projects on the blockchain.
Totally. I'm just gonna say that on the same call today with the cat herders. Yeah, I kind of picked up that sentiment as well. And towards the end, they didn't even hide it. Like, they weren't even clever about it. They straight up said, yeah, we're stakeholders and we pay you guys for security. They try to turn miners into like guns for hire, essentially. So I heard that too.
They're minimalizing what security really is. They're like, they want cheap security. It's like cheap work ain't good and good work ain't cheap.
Yeah. Chris from FlexPool mentioned that, but I don't want to interrupt Blind Run. Was there a question in that you wanted to elaborate on?
No, I just wanted to make sure that I'm hearing everything right, because it did feel very condescending towards the group. And I will agree, of course, with Seth there. I know that I've come out and I've said at this point right now, I think the smartest move is mining and selling, but that's coming from a businessman perspective. Straight up, I'm a miner. I have to make sure that I protect whatever my profits are. And if Bitcoin's going to be a safer bet, which at this point it's proven to be over the past few months, then I'm going to go ahead and swap to Bitcoin. And then if I want to play with DeFi or whatever else, then of course I'm still going to do that and make content on it.
Sure, that makes sense. And again, like apropos of this morning's call with the cat herders, if what they're saying is like, oh yeah, we like you guys as cheap security, and like Nem was saying as well, then then obviously if you're being compared to like a security guard, you're going to go work for somebody who pays you more for that same security. That makes sense. The incentives.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think it's important to realize that some of the participants on that call are actively paid to advocate for 1559, to refute claims that they don't feel have merit. They're actively paid to do that job. And I'm not saying that's even a bad thing, but when you compare that to the miner position, which is largely, hey, this affects our livelihood, or this affects something that we're intimately involved in, you're going to come at it from two very different perspectives.
I think the key thing that they made very clear today and have made clear in the past is anything that talks about, well, poor miners, we're getting our livelihoods cut and all that kind of stuff, they don't want to hear it. They do not want to hear it. They're like, you will get paid what we feel like we can get away with.
Right.
The problem is that what BitsBeTrippin was saying about the security, unfortunately, fell upon deaf ears. And it's like, well, we've been doing this for years and we've had situations like this. No, you haven't. You have not had a situation where you've artificially lowered compared to everybody else. You've artificially lowered. It fell upon deaf ears. And that was the frustrating part of the call today.
I think the format of the call also didn't exactly lend itself to forming a cohesive argument, and I felt a little bit bad for Michael because I know how much work he has put in over the last couple of days, preparing models and going in depth. And fortunately, it's content that comes out on his channel and that people still see. But in the form of that call, there really wasn't the opportunity to present a cohesive case and say this is what we're seeing. And I respect Michael for coming out and saying, I think this is easily mitigated in my model by raising the block reward by 1 ETH. It's a very simple response. It ignores a lot of the political or controversial.
It's a good compromise.
And he didn't really get the chance to make that case. He said he got to say some of those words, but it was immediately buried in just a flood of pre-rehearsed rhetoric.
Yeah, and then they believe if the hash rate drops off after they implement it, that the network's not going to have any issue like ETC had using the same network.
Which is false. So first off, Roger from InnoSilicon stated that the ASICs only make up, and he was just speculating, only make up about 10% of the total hash rate. According to my math, I don't think that's true.
That's really low.
Well, if you look at the nonces though, but if you look at the nonces, you can see the ASICs in the nonces. So that's you can see how much bandwidth are in those certain regions, and there's major hash rate, and I don't know what data matrix. Like he was just going up. Hey, are you using an ASIC or a GPU? He's not doing that.
Well, he might be going on their internal sales as InnoSilicon being
for himself. You know, it's like what he thinks he's the whole market though.
Yeah, I mean, I was taking his comment as because I went back and listened to it a couple times after, and he said it in a frame of that his awareness with InnoSilicon and I guess the partners that they know of, that it's 10%. But I mean, there could be other commissioned things that we don't know. But I mean, I was actually surprised about that because ahead of that, I know Christy Mineham had put out a thing saying that, you know, from their research, it only looks like 3% of the network. So, I mean, indirectly kind of invalidated that perspective. So, you know, if they're 10%, that's, I mean, right now that's 40 terahash. That's quite a bit. They're on February 8th. So I was doing some research too. February 8th, there was a spike in the network, a decrease, a pretty sizable decrease for about an hour and a half. And I don't know if that was February 8th and let's see here. Blind Run, you're down in Texas. That was around the same time you guys were offline, right?
Yeah, we had a lot of offline farms down here. So
okay, so that could have been that, but that was 100 terahash. So 100 terahash for a 4-hour period went down, and that's a pretty significant amount.
Yeah, mining's really popular in Texas because of the low power costs and good tax benefits, so on and so forth.
Same here. I know. I know Riot went down because I mean Oklahoma, we lost power too, not extensively as Texas, but they like rolling blacked out the downtown city, and I know Riot blockchain is in like downtown Oklahoma City. And I know they got shut down, and they have quite a bit, and I know that they're mainly Bitcoin, but I know for a fact that I've heard from around here that they do have some Ethereum ASICs.
So I did want to call out like Micah was super I think probably the most genuine on the call, and there's a lot of questions I have for him at some point. If you could hook me up with him, or someone.
I might have a question that leads into like for one for Micah that you have, but I want to go back to the ASIC point. So besides Roger making a statement based on the information or data that he has and whatever we can say, there was another point made which goes back to the security aspect. Is someone commented that most of the networks or projects that were 51% attacked were primarily GPU mined, and you've pushed back on that, Michael. You want to elaborate on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, so it was not just kind of open statement. It was very direct because of saying that there was never a network that had ASICs on it attacked, and that's incorrect. I mean, Verge has been attacked. There's been a few out there, and when you have something like that's like Merge Mine, like Verge, where you have 5 different algorithms where ASICs, FPGAs, and GPUs can mine that network, like right there, you already have the instance where you had an ASIC hardened network. But I try to dismiss it in a whole other way, just because it all comes back down to the incentives. So even if the incentives are aligned to go long on the current or the algorithm type, there's certain circumstances where, like, if the bidding for that hash power exceeds a certain point, it doesn't matter about the mining operators, the people like us, like the investors are going to call and like, hey, I heard the brokerage is paying 2 times value. Why are you not bringing that value to us? And you get this other dynamic, like in any business. And, because, we don't know why they would be going long like that, but you can get into a situation where it's not about the, if a large farm's not going to go to a brokerage or not and sell their hash rate. It's purely at the economics of it. And if somebody puts a large enough juicy buy order out there, there is a chance that they could pivot it. And it's agnostic that's an ASIC or not. It's just pure, do you have hash power or not? And lo and behold, they could use it nefariously. That was my main point to it, is that it's not a fully on factual statement, because I know for the folks that have E3s that had put them on nice hash, right? That their E3s were mining to nice hash because they were getting a better yield there. Yep. I mean, so it was kind of that just shows somebody that mines and somebody that doesn't mine. And that's okay. I mean, they can make assumptions like that, but a lot of the research folks, people writing Medium articles, people that are writing stuff for CoinDesk, they're not miners. They're not researchers, and they don't consult with us, any of us, right? It's out there. They know how to get a hold of me. Hell, half of them follow me, like on Twitter, but like nobody reaches out to ask any questions or just, hey, what do you think about this? It's all going to like ETH researchers or somebody like that are not mining, and they're making assumptions on it.
Well, on the economics, sir. You go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say on that point, Georgios for Paradigm, who is a little bit rude in my personal opinion, but that's between me and him, said that the ETH network exists to serve investors, DeFi and etc., not miners. Currently, we overpay for security. And so you're talking about them reaching out to you. They're not gonna reach out to you because we're not their primary focus.
Right. They're there to look at the bottom line and the profitability at the end of the day. And I think that's some of the reasons why some of them are advocating so hard about the EIP 1559. And this is my opinion of what I was understanding. It's more like they're speculating, aka gambling, that the price will go up while they're burning this on something that has no supply cap.
Well, yeah, and if it goes back to economics, the whole thing is like if the coin drops in value, they're going to lose miners. If the profitability of mining Ethereum drops, I'm going to jump off to whatever the profitable coin is, right? And there are a couple that are super close. Like it's not unfathomable to see Ravencoin or Conflux surpass them in profitability.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's where I was trying to be. I guess is on the rebuttals. I was trying to, even though there was some animosity there, obviously, in the tone that they were like, "Hey, you're this," and I wanted to flip it and say, well, it's a two-way street, right? We're long crypto, and just as easily as you're dismissing that activity, we can also pivot. So, I mean, no hard feelings. It is what it is. But when the network starts getting attacked, if it happens in an ecosystem where nothing's been touched, and that's unfortunate. Like miners have like what happened with like ETH Classic, some people fell off, some people try to give them more hash power, right? There was more of a grassroots kind of attempt to like, okay, you guys really need to change something here. Obviously you can't compete at this level. You need to fork some kind of mechanism. That was one thing I didn't talk to on this, was the opportunity that they could obviously do. Instead of even doing the block reward, is ETH, if there's an existential risk here, they could easily fork in the hard fork, go with Mess or Gravity Well or something else that's just 51% resistant and not do the block reward, right? That was another option. Didn't throw it out there, but it was like, there is an opportunity you could do that too. But, I was trying to just understand his, George's perspective of like, we're just a managed service, and they only want to pay what they think. And I think there's a fallacy in proof of work where you want the most security you can. You should not even care. Let the market do what the market's going to do, because there's also fallacies on like AFAB's point where he's like talking about economic hardening, which is a nice way of saying trying to pump the price, but like at both of those instances, that's why I try to use those two instances with the reduction. I mean, I think I was luckily like researched enough and polished enough for that to like counter those points. But I don't think a lot of it was heard.
But that actually showed how arrogant they were. You led them down the path. I saw you going down that path of saying, look, you have to do something to stop a 51% attack, and led them right up to the water. And they just were like, nope, never going to happen to us. It's like, I'm sitting there going, yeah, masks and all the other things that ETC did. And I'm like, all they would have to do is do that. But yet they're not even considering anything like that.
Well, Micah brought up the 50% attack through NiceHash, which is a super valid point, because if everybody goes to NiceHash because it's more profitable than mining ETH directly, then all it takes is one bad actor to pay more for the hash power. And boom, it doesn't take all the miners together. It takes one bad actor.
Right. All the miners can choose to go to NiceHash to say, I'm not going to do the 51% attack, but if somebody else wants to use my capacity to do it, hey, that's not on me.
Right. And going back to AFAB's point, And I took some pretty decent notes on this particular meeting. DC investor is AFAB. Since the beginning of ETH, there has always been a plan to move away from proof of work, which is going along Georgios. Currently, ETH is becoming unattractive because of the poor user experience. I kind of summarized it there, but he was talking about, if he's not pushing ETH to his colleagues or friends like that because, trying to do Uniswap or any type of transactions is really bad. Transaction fees are high. And by the way, will stay high because we already talked about this. This is not going to reduce the transaction fee and the possibility of our transactions getting stuck. Burning fees is needed to make a more consistent experience. Now, I agree with the consistent experience, right? So the fees are going to become more predictable and stuff like that. But this leads back to every point that everybody's making. You counter these points from a mining perspective. And you just get, well, we want to focus on what the investors, the DeFi space, and what those people, the people that I guess make us most of our money, are focused on, not what the miners are focused on. Even though, our security, let's put it that way, our security is like, I don't even know what's a good security company nowadays. I don't even know what's a good security company, but it's
ADT is probably like the only one really.
All right, so we're ADT, and they want to go with
SolarWinds.
They want to go with SolarWinds or something. There you go.
Don't say that. That's a bad example.
No, I said not SolarWinds.
It's a bad.
I was gonna say Blackwater still exists too, but I wasn't sure what kind of security you were talking about.
Well, that just any analogy you want to throw in there. So the point is that we're offering a better type of security. We just ask for a little bit of compromise, right? We'll take a hit as far as the profitability, but compromise with us. And they're just like, well, we just want to pay the cheapest that we can for security, and just so that way we could stuff our pockets or increase our holdings. Now, Son of a Tech mentioned Micah, and I had a question about that, so I'm not sure if this fills in as Son of a Tech, but who was it? I forgot who he interrupted, talking about miners don't attract value, or somebody interrupted him, I think. Miners don't attract value.
It was Chon? It was Chon that interrupted him.
Yeah,
that's when he called, that's when he called that miners aren't worth anything.
Yeah,
which I found very strange as a pool owner. He said that, like, you run a pool and you don't like miners? You lost me.
Yeah, you got to see where his he's got more in the way of assets, and as well as he is heavily in staking. So
yeah, Dave, I think hit the nail on the head earlier when he said there were some parties present on the call who have a financial incentive. Like you can't convince a man of your argument if he's paid not to understand. So
right.
If I can
paid
jump back
not
real
to
quick
learn.
also. Yeah, but jump back real quick. Vega, you took phenomenal notes there, by the way. Going that full quote for AFAB from earlier on. Really briefly to address that before pivoting into additional content. When he started his argument talking about the roadmap for ETH, I think it's probably fair for us to acknowledge that he does have a valid point in the start, in that, I mean, as early as the ICO, man, when you were buying ETH with Bitcoin, proof of stake was on the roadmap. It was a promise to people who bought the ICO before mainnet happened. So he's not wrong in bringing that up. It's just everything that comes after that, where it's like, I mean, if you ignore the current, absolute state of the network, then yeah, it's a foolish argument. But there has to be some kind of a looking forward to when proof of stake is going to happen. And what I kept hearing from him between the lines, I love that. Also, Dave mentioned this, that there's some very carefully rehearsed rhetoric that they use. Do you guys notice how many times they use the word stakeholder? Like, yeah, stakeholder, yeah, our stakeholders, stake. Like they drop that word so many times to just sort of like reinforce the point that they're, in their minds, they're already done with mining. They're already like, in their minds, it's already proof of stake, just because staking exists on, like, it's the only feature on 2.0 right now. But again, just to say, he does have that one valid point in that, like, the promise to the earliest ICO ETH holders was that proof of stake would happen. We're actually, I think, Bits can probably speak to this more authoritatively. We're probably a little past due on that, on them delivering that promise.
Yeah, it was supposed to be August of 2017 was the original date. And it came out, ETH did its pre-mine I believe like in May of 15, and then we went live in September, like 15th of 2015. And I finally got a miner running by October of 2015. But yeah, I mean, the point was that we were going to have 2 full years of proof of work mining, and then it would pitch over to proof of stake. And then when we knew that was slipping in 2017, a lot of the videos then was, you know, hey, we're going to get a, you know, another solid year. And this is a good thing. We don't know what's going to happen with Ice Age because, again, it was their first time. But yeah, it's been getting kicked down. This would be the 4th time they've moved Ice Age. I think 4th, maybe 5th time that they've moved Ice Age. And, you know, Ice Age originally was there to wean us off, right? It was a poison pill in the network because the original thought of the transition was they were gonna transition this new, they were gonna force the nodes and force the pools off to move people over. So then they were going to saturate the network with so much difficulty that it just made sense not to mine, and you would stop mining the chain because you would just never get any reward. So that's the point of Ice Age. Now they're looking at like, okay, we got to kick Ice Age down. I think they'll move it again another year. And they're talking about still leaving it in there, even though the transition plan still isn't written. That was the last dev call, was talking to the steps that they were going to try to get written down, at least from like when you're going through like a proposal setup, you kind of go through a pink, a red, a gold, and white draft, right? They're not even at the pink outline yet of all of the steps from the transition standpoint. That was what was asked for at the last dev call. So they're going to start hopefully getting some of that together. I don't know if they're going to do that in an EIP or what, but we'll get to understand more of what that transition process is going to look like. And then I think that'll allow us to forecast when that'll actually occur. And are they going to use Ice Age to force everybody off, including ASICs?
I had one more big question. And that was, Giorgio said that the fee revenue drop off was not near, or was much lower than we think. But he didn't provide any numbers or statistics or data to back that up. And I know you've done a lot of models surrounding this drop. What do you think the validity to that statement is specifically? And if there is validity to it, do you have any data to back that up?
Are you talking with the MEV fees or the?
No, this was when we were talking about the 30 to 40% or whatever drop in profitability after the implementation of 1559. He specifically said that is not, So
before you answer that, Carter, Hasu stated in the meeting that alongside of what Blind Run was talking about is that the projected profit hit would only be 20 to 30%. And I just wanted to hear your numbers again. Compared to his numbers. Again, no data was provided or information on why he projected 20 to 30%, but just to add to that.
Yeah, so I think because they were doing the research on the MEV, so I think they've already done some research on figuring out how much, and they're doing about that 7.5% month over month growth. I think they think it's going to hit like 550 to 600 terahash. I think it's going to hit more like around 700 terahash. But they're looking at it as it looks like in the current state, where the model that I had put out together takes like 10 different dimensions. So it takes like current flat price, flat growth, high volume. So there's 2 real elements we're looking at, is price up or down, and we're looking at volume, which is a translation into how many fees we're getting, the yield. Where we're supposed to only be getting 2 coins per block. Right now we're averaging 4. Since May to essentially December, I've taken all those block rewards, including the spikes in August, and we had a couple in October, we had a couple in November. It's averaging at around 3.1. That's where I'm getting the +1 block reward, is that if you take the totality of that time, it was only averaged out to 3, even though we had some spikes. Right now, it's actually averaging almost 4. Since like the end of December to current, it's averaged almost 4 ETH full. But so the numbers I looked at was various dimensions. If we have a price that's ascending up at a current rate, where at the end, it'll end like in August at like $3,000, and we'll have the same amount of block reward or a slow increase. Then there's ones that have low block rewards, which just pretty much get it all the way back down to normal 2.1 block reward, but like $4,000 price. Then I have some that show $10,000 price with, 10 ETH rewards per block, right? I mean, that would be like, I can't fathom. The math on that looks silly. But like, then there's extremely low price and low volume, which then kind of slowly sets it down. So bottom line, as I was showing these different models to figure, if you just at one time during a hard fork, just take that away, what happens to us? So 3 of the 10 of those models put us in a weird predicament where hash rate goes up because the yield is high and maybe the price is flat or the price is low, but the yield's gotten so high because it's been cheaper to transact because ETH's cheaper. And now most of our mining rewards are coming from the transaction fees. So then if you go off and you shut that off in June, and let's say transaction average block reward is 10, and now you're going to snap that down to 2, and let's say Ethereum is at $300, you're going to take 70% of that network right off in one click, right? And then I'm looking at 700 terahash, and it drops to 185 terahash. You have an existential threat on being 51% attacked.
Yeah.
These guys aren't looking at it like, they're looking at it much simpler than that. They're looking at where it is today, and it's at 4 right now. And if they remove everything, it's 50%. But then they're saying, well, we know we're going to lose a certain amount of hash rate. And the estimate that they've thrown out there has been 25%. I think that's really where they're getting to the 20 to 30% loss of hash rate, is they're assuming that there's a certain amount of hash rate that comes off the network just as a result of this.
Well, they got to know something that we don't know, because I mean, Roger from InnoSilicon said that is the A11 already out, or does anybody know that ASIC, the A11, or am I saying that wrong?
I mean, it's out. It's out like privately.
It's out privately, and they're continuing to make more. So let's just say that okay, they don't care about the regular GPU miners because that InnoSilicon is already got some private, they got some private information showing that their ASICs are going to be online, or will be able to make up the hash rate for the GPU miners that take off or leave the network hash. But he blatantly said during the meeting as well that, we're continuing to produce. Why would you continue to produce ASICs knowing that ETH 2.0 is around the corner? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. So there's got to be some bits of information privately that we're unaware of.
Couple years.
Well, he's basing it on the couple years. Yeah. So he's basing it on the current
projection.
So to tape all those out, right? They were taping those out and in production 8 months ago. So they're just now coming to fruition. They probably still have another couple batches coming from production. They do have at least 110 of them right now on Crazy Pool. I shared that link, I think, a while back, but there's about 110 of the A11s and Phoenixes out on Crazy Pool right now, pushing anywhere from 2.1 to 3.0 gigahash. They have them labeled. There's 110 of them on one address. So they have at least a one batch, but when you even sum that up, that's like that's not even a terahash. So when he starts talking 10%, they've had a few cycles, right? I think he kind of let something out. He let the cat out of the bag a little on volume, because we could start to calculate how many, if he's talking 10%, and let's say even 80% of that was on silicon, we could start doing some backwards math to figure out how many that they've had, how many batches they've had privately and on the network. But yeah, so it really comes down to, if they start, what I'm going to be watching from their side is if they start taking another batch orders in May and June for like November, because now if we're well on our way towards POS, then those folks are in a situation. The only reason why I think they would do that is if we get to June, July, and they do get through with EIP 1555, they do not do a block reward increase. So now it squashes the participant ability, and now they can capture at an efficiency rate more people. So they're going to run a couple more batches, because they're going to just run their numbers guy and say, hey, look, the pool is collapsed. We're the most efficient. Give us more money to produce more. And even if they go a year from now, people are going to ROI, so we're not going to get sued. They could do a whole other round of batches with them. And now ETH is going to be probably pretty substantially ASIC'd. But yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a.
The other thing on the ASIC side, and one is the ASIC manufacturer has no incentive to tell the truth. I'm not saying that Roger was lying, but I'm saying he has no incentive to give us a correct number for what percentage they are of the network. because things like N-once analysis and everything else, they can only show you that an ASIC is there if there's a fingerprint. They cannot prove that ASICs aren't there, because it's entirely possible to mask all those signatures. No guarantee they are or aren't, et cetera. The other thing is that an ASIC batch, it is not cost effective to build a batch of only 110 ASIC miners. There's a minimum viable quantity, and for an ASIC like an ETH ASIC, it's very expensive to build. You've got a lot of complicated memory interfaces and other things. You have to have a very high volume of those to even justify the investment. So the idea that they're only going to build 110 or 3 or 4 batches of 110, yeah, that's just doesn't make any economic sense. You're talking minimum thousands of units, minimum, say 10 terahash. I think I'm just throwing that from the cuff, but as a minimum amount of those A11s that they would have to make to even make sense.
Yeah, I mean the taping out process of that is right now, to even do it is close to $100 million. I mean, just if you have a design and you already have done a lot of the R&D stuff, just to get it done and get in the queue and pay priority and then try to work the supply chain side, that's a lot of R&D to even do. It's just like, I mean, I know we're all waiting for, if AMD is going to release their next series, and are they going to go with HBM2? They're going to have something that's going to counter the HX. I don't know what it is. I'm hoping that they ended up doing, something that's a specific design. But I mean, if it ends up coming out and it's just a rebadged 5700, they saved on the R&D cost, because it's exceptionally expensive to do this stuff. So yeah, I agree with you totally, David, that their numbers are not going to come right out and tell us. The fact that he gave us a forecast of even 10% is interesting to me.
Can I ask also, so with David and with Carter, I think it was Roger also, and pardon, I got a poor memory here. I think Vega had a better idea, right? Dell Pencil. I try to rely on a sharp mind, but I'm trying to remember exactly who it was that mentioned specifically, yeah, we may well put GPU cores into some of our products. And my first thought was of the fake SIC models like the Antminer G2. I've got one just right over here next to the desk. Do you guys have any insight into that right now? Carter, you just mentioned, I mean, if they did do a run of air quotes fake SICs that were based on the 5700, I mean, that should play in this market, shouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing and David, you'd probably be able to respond more specifically, but I mean, one of the reasons why I have a basic understanding of the cost is that I was actually trying to figure out, like, hey, if we made a mining edition of something with like Sapphire, what would it cost me if I got a certain core? I could go with a low core but a high memory bandwidth interface like HBM2. I know HBM2 is expensive, but if I could get those as wafers, kind of like the GPU I have from RiveTech that doesn't have a PCIe interface, it's purely just the USB built onto it. Very custom layout, but with like a 512 bus memory interface, right? Like if I'm doing DDR6, to where, like that's what killed AMD's on RDNA 2 for many of the mining right now, is they went with 256 bus interface. On the RX, on the RTX series, they went with 320 and 384. That's why we're seeing 112 hash rates on, the 3090s and 100 on the 3080. That for whatever reason they collapsed that bus range, and maybe it was because they didn't want to try to sell those to miners and they knew that would be a thing. But like, you could go with a cheaper core, high memory bit interface, and then just buy RX 470s that have HBM2, right? And then just do it that's 4096 bus, and now we'd have 120 mega hash, low core already, a more truly custom mining card, and pay $500 a piece. But they're going to be putting out doing the rough order math there, it's like 156 mega hash per card, right? At like 135 watts, right? So I want that. Like, make that.
Yeah,
I'm sold.
Yeah, right.
I'm sold. Sign me up. Take my wallet.
Yeah.
Right. So it was mentioned in the call, and I guess that's kind of what I'm hoping.
I think it was Wang Chung. Wasn't there 2 ASIC individuals in that meeting? Or no?
That sounds right.
One ASIC
ASIC and pool,
and then F2 pool, which was the other individual.
Yeah.
And then there was Chris from
Yeah, the InnoSilicon guy. I mean, him just kind of flaunting that he was going to be using the VGA core. It's kind of an interesting approach, considering they need something that'll communicate with the memory faster so that they can get the hash rate up. Because I mean, like right now, they're just using high performance SoC chips. At least that's how my E3s are. I'm running 3 of them right now, and I got them on ETC myself, and. Yeah, those things are just high bandwidth SoC chips for its time.
Yeah, it all just depends on what trade-offs they want to make, particularly on power consumption. But InnoSilicon owns IP in the sense of intellectual property for generic GPU cores, so things that could run the equivalent to CUDA or equivalent to OpenCL,
right?
And interface with memory bandwidth. So they're not talking about grabbing some AMD cores or grabbing some NVIDIA. They're talking about building that IP into a custom chip so that it's fully programmable and it can interface with the memory. And that gives them, if they sell that as a miner to mining farms, then ETH can fork, ETH can go away. They can reprogram that chip just like a GPU. Honestly, it's probably a great business strategy for them. And I think I'd
almost want to check it out myself, even if all I got was one unit.
Yeah, my philosophical issue with ASICs is I love the quest for efficiency and everything. My issue has always been the landfill approach. So if you make something that is reprogrammable and is flexible and can be applied to other purposes, I'm a lot more of a supporter of it. It still hurts because your costs are so much lower than a GPU. But the other point would be those devices are going to have worse power efficiency. If you do a dedicated piece of silicon, your power efficiency is always going to be better than programmable, typically at least an order of magnitude.
So I wanted to wrap us back around to the topic at hand a little bit and try to get a summary. So adjustments that we can make on pricing, or not pricing, profitability would be 20 to 30% based on if pools implement the ability for miner extracted value from DeFi. Is that correct? Or MEV from DeFi?
It's a broad stroke statement. The 20-30% I meant to comment on, it really depends on what window of time you decide to look at in current fees. And then it really depends on whether they think hash rate drops off gradually or sharply. I was doing some research on this over the last couple of days. My research showed that it's less of a gradual drop off of hash rate as profitability goes down. It's more that there are sharp inflection points at which hash rate drops off sharply or stops ramping up. So I'm not sure that the idea that the hash rate is going to go down, thus profitability is going to go up because block transaction fees are removed applies until the total reward in US dollars goes below those critical function points. So that all comes down to the timing of when 1559 drops and what the price is. There's so many factors in that. But yeah, you can say optimistically, it shouldn't be a drop in half once everything shakes out. I would roughly agree with that. But you're already going to be at pretty low values at that point.
It gets you close enough to miners that are worried about keeping their profits jumping to another point, right?
Yeah, I mean, what if you go to the flip side of that and go, okay, let's say they push off the Ice Age event coming up in July, go that back 1 year. Instead of doing London hard fork, they just implement 1559, and then right at the same time, all of a sudden you have another DeFi boom cycle, and they integrate the tipping into it. And now you're getting now the DeFi market's tipping to force their transactions through faster than everybody else, and the user's still getting charged a network fee, even though let's say it's predictable, and they're saying, let's say, throwing numbers out there on a high volume day, 20%. So you're getting hit with 20% plus the tips, or your
but it'll be more clear. The
Right.
UI will display that. It'll be more clear, my dude. You will know you're getting raped by network fees.
Right. Instead of it being hidden.
Yeah.
Oh, the beep. That's perfect. That's good.
So
that was good timing.
So I have this question off of what Micah said in the miner value statement. There is a lot more value that miners could get if they could get into MEV. What the heck? Can you guys enlighten me on that?
So if I'm going to jump in and just say I agree with Brian, because your question, Vega, I think he started to address already, or with what Micah brought up in the call. And you figure with the DeFi folks, if you pay attention to a lot of the CT like degen folks who are like, who are doing 7-figure trades daily or working with 7 figures or in capital or dealing with leverage, some of these guys, as the rise of DeFi has become undeniable, and on decentralized platforms like Uniswap, they've just kind of just sort of gritted their teeth and dealt with the rising fees, because they're talking about, at the end of a good day, just making crazy profits. So for them, it's just a cost of doing business.
Right.
Like in a perfect world, if 1559 does go through, and their fees are just their fees are predictable, but then they want to pay the premium to be first to market or first to execute a trade, I actually do see that fitting the past behavior of some of these characters.
Yeah. So we went to Universal, and we're paying extra to get the fast pass, is what you're telling me.
Yeah,
pretty much.
So people are paying the fast pass, and we're collecting the tips off of that, them paying the extra fee to get the fast pass to skip everything.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in addition,
and they're
to
trying to marginalize
security,
that. They're saying that that's not going to happen. They're trying to marginalize that, saying, "Oh, it'll be there, but nobody's going to use it because they're already paying a predetermined fee." And I'm looking at the flip side of that, going, if DeFi goes through a boom cycle again, they're going to be paying it, and you're going to see it be worse with the tip.
Like, are you talking about like boom cycles? So let's say Pancake, when that came
takes
out.
off, and something like that. A new one takes off, just like whoop, because it's the problem that Ethereum always has, and why the fees are always high, is that anything big on their network congests it, and then you're paying for the high congestion fee, because that's supposed to quote unquote deter you from wanting to do a transaction right now. It's trying to get you to hold up. You're going to want to do your transaction a little bit later. We're experiencing higher than normal congestion. But the whole DeFi thing, they're like, yeah, screw that. We want it anyway. And everybody around them that's trying to just regularly use, they're like, oh God, I can't do anything. It's costing me $15 to send 5.
yeah. Whereas some of these traders, they like air quotes discovered Uniswap, and they were like, oh yeah, I paid 4 figures in fees today. Do not give AF because I made 5.
Right.
So
the regular. Go ahead.
One of the other things that's pushing it too right now isn't just DeFi, it's the NFTs. So a lot of the traffic right now is a lot of the NFT traffic, and it's getting big dollars, and those are like one-time transaction purchases that are large, and they're paying $800 to extract or move that NFT right now, and that's another thing that's exacerbating the situation.
Yeah,
I know that market also is inflated because of it. I think you look at some of those prices where it's like really like an NFT, like the values. NFTs are massively overvalued.
I wanted to be fair and mention that as far as from the perspective of the congestion, my understanding as the block resets, that does solve the congestion. So we are getting more stable fees and reducing congestion as far as I understand. So to be completely fair, those are 2 problems that are valid, that are solved.
Yeah, but they're solving that with bigger blocks.
Oh, but I'm just saying those are problems that are solved, right? Like we can't just sit here and beat everybody up and not acknowledge, because if we do that, we're no better than they are with completely ignoring the concerns of miners. Okay, so I want to make sure that we are like on the same page here, that there are clear issues.
No, we agree. I 100% agree. Just when I did the 4K giveaway, much of my transactions got stuck and trying to send money to the winners. And then the winners couldn't even pull their funds out of that particular address or wallet because of the fees. The fees are more than the winnings. So there's a clear problem. EIP 1559 will solve that. I believe the thing here is, if we're willing to compromise, why can't you? And this reminds me of that picture, that meme picture that everybody keeps putting up on Twitter, where it's a guy walking with his girl and the guy's looking back at the new girl, right? So we're the girl next to the dude, right? We're walking this direction and our dude's looking back at the new hotness. The new hotness is ETH 2.0 and EIP 1559, and we're the miners. And we're about to get ditched.
But the thing that needs to be understood, though, is that compromise is a trigger word for them. They're like, so basically they see that as a bribe. So we need to pay a ransom to miners so that they will continue to secure our network. They have said that out front. So both Micah and Tim have been very good about giving us a roadmap. And basically they said the only thing that we can see that's going to lead to some change, and they don't say the word compromise, some change like a block reward, is identifying a security issue. So every time, I just looked at the panel, every time the idea of a compromise or some other word that insinuated that, you could hear the eyes roll every single time. And so the more we stop using that term, the better off we're going to be in trying to get what we're really trying to accomplish, which is, in this case, a block reward or smoothing or some other change.
All right, so omitting the word compromise from vocabulary, got it.
But at the same time, they just look at us as we're a necessary evil that they actually see as end of life. Well, so they feel like they can kind of like, oh, you're gonna have to go somewhere anyway. Why do we care?
Well, they were planning on divorcing us the moment they got married. So
anyway, so I had Crypto Z. He was talking about this a little bit in the Aeon pool earlier, and he was saying so about the EIP, 1559. He goes, so they are going to increase like the block size, whatever, and he goes, which will reduce transaction fees, coming to the DeFi, MEV, however you want to put that. I guess I missed part of the MEV, so I can't vouch for that on my end. But he's saying the defaults today put high bets in to include the transactions as soon as possible. The next block is mined. After EIP 1559, bots don't have to put that high bet due to the higher transactions capacities and blocks. So, if that is the case, that kind of like really makes it worse, in my opinion, right? Like it's definitely not going to fix it. Like we've all established, it's not going to fix anything. But from what I'm being, like, it's going to get worse from what I'm saying. Like it's not going to get better. I don't see how any of this will get better. In my opinion.
I've always thought this was pretty interesting, and there was a lot of really smart people that have done a lot of analysis on how those fees are going to react. But it's a very academic analysis, and the problem with academic analysis like that is if you forget about a factor, your simulation is only as good as the data you're using. And so in the back of my mind, the whole time I've looked at 1559, I said, why wouldn't these guys that have the exact perspective that Seth was saying earlier, I'm making so much money on this transaction, I just want to see it go through. Why wouldn't they continue to bid up high? And why wouldn't they continue to stuff the blocks? And there's actually a remote possibility that you could actually drive fees higher than they are now because you've got an enforced base fee. And if their mentality stayed the same, again, they've modeled this out and they're pretty confident this is not what's going to happen. But in the back of your mind, you have to think that's a possible scenario.
Right. Oh yeah, human greed is a hell of a drug.
Well, and at the end of the day, right, they call miners greedy, but the traders and the holders and everybody is just as greedy. Like at the end of the day, we're worried about making money, right? So it seems a little silly to just point out one singular group that's worried about that.
Right. I don't know. I was just kind of curious on how to put that through. And, and what I've kind of gathered from earlier is how they feel like they don't need to pay for the security, right? So I really want to hit on that for a second, is that like, if they're not going to pay for security, they don't care too much about security, What about all the smart contracts, right? You know, are they not valuable to them? Are they not worth securing? You know, there's more than just. I try to like think about this. It's more than just the miners on the ETH network. You know, they have the stakeholders. You know, they have people that are running smart contracts, people that are doing actual things on their platform. Does their security not matter? Do they not matter anymore? Is that kind of what I'm getting at? If security is not going to be a factor, like it's gonna affect them at some point. If we get 51% attacks over and over and over, double spend attacks, I mean, we haven't seen that really happen on a platform that holds smart contracts and has actually functioning, like big functioning projects and products on the platform. So, I mean, we're kind of uncharted, of course, like we're not going to know what's going to happen, but I don't see it being good if they don't seem to care, right?
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to interact with a number of the people that were on that call in Discord or other avenues, and most of them do understand security at some level. They understand there is some threshold. They think the threshold's lower than what we're concerned about. They understand it. But there was at least one or two personalities on that call that made statements that were truly shocking to me, along the lines of, absolutely no matter what, we have enough security. We can do whatever we want to miners. We can drop the block reward to a quarter of an ETH, and we will still have enough security. Nothing bad will ever happen to us. And I was just taken back by that hubris.
I mean, they'll always have that 10% of ASICs, you know, because some of those ASICs do belong to the, you know, ETH themselves. So, I mean, they will at least have that hash, but 10% is not a lot compared to what it is now. And the network is way too big for that a little amount. You know, my opinion on that.
And too much is made out of the fact that, well, we only need this much hash rate. It's not about that. It's about the entire percentage of the entire hash rate that's out there. We have new miners that are introduced. You think they're just going to go away all of a sudden? No, they go away gradually. So that's the other part that they don't understand and they don't seem to comprehend.
I got two questions real quick in my live stream. So I think they're both pool related, and I think we talked about this at the beginning and Ian missed it. Sounded something along the lines of free for all starting. Ian, I'm trying to relate your question, but he literally asked me this. So hi Serpent, what did we miss about mining pools? Right at the beginning, sounded something along the lines of free for all starting. And then Knife Party, what are the odds of major mining pools like Ethermine and Sparkpool deciding not to follow 1559 and hard fork? So if you could elaborate on the pool's perspective, this whole thing, and what would happen? One more time.
Yeah, so right now there's still a whole bunch that are not flagged for it. It's going to be an interesting weekend. I've had a few different emails from folks I believe that are representing some of those pools to say, okay, well, if we do flag for it, you know, are we flagging only if there's a block reward? So right now, I don't think anything's in stone. I think the actual decision points from all the pools, if they're going to participate or not, are going to come after the dev call next week when they actually put it officially on where is it going to be on London or not, and then everybody will start to adjust accordingly. I think it also comes down heavily with, are they going to even mention that? I know the word compromise, we were just talking about them not liking that word compromise. I look at it as like, it doesn't even matter what anybody thinks, right? As far as I'm concerned, on the ETH core devs, anybody in the ecosystem, if that hash rate is way up and the price is flat to low and our rewards are high, it's going to be plain and simple to the smart people in that room that they're going to look at it and go, you know what? I think he's called it, and we probably should adjust rewards accordingly, because this isn't a question if the network will get attacked. Every network that's had the opportunity cost the incentive is there to attack. So, and it's not even somebody could go a long position on Polkadot, a short position on ETH, and spend $2 million and attack the network. It's that kind of gaming that we're talking about. So I think no matter what they pick, it's all going to come down to what the network looks like. In the meantime, I think it's our due diligence as a group and communication out to the pools to make sure that, hey, if this goes live, you need to ensure that this MEV discussion that we're having, that you're set up for it, because we're going to need you to carry the torch on making sure the pool is set up correctly so we can extract that value. Right now, it's a moot point because we're getting the entire transaction fee. So it's not something that they need to go set up right now, because we're already getting all the transaction with or without any of that that's going on. It's just a subset of that transaction fee. If you think of it like a number line and it's the 10, we're getting all 10. If the MEV ends up being a 6 sometimes and a 4 sometimes and an 8 sometimes, we need to make sure the pools are set up and configured that way to where we're putting our hash power to where we are getting that MEV at its most efficient. And whatever pool does it the best is probably going to get the most participation. So it's really kind of challenging them to make sure that they do it. So I think to answer that in a long way, we're going to find out probably next week. I'm actually seeing if I can get on that call. I will stay quiet, but I want to be available for them if there's questions with regards to this block reward stuff. It's not a make or break if they make the decision, but I want to at least be sure I'm available if I can be. I'm actually supposed to fly out to Jackson Hole next week and have some me time for a bit, but we'll see. I'll
not
still
allowed.
One thing I wanted to also mention, because I've heard a lot of people say this as well, the miners will just hard fork. Well, that's the key with London, is the fact that they're delaying the ice age as part of London. That's why they want to tie these two together, is because if we say, well, fine, then the mining pools just won't go along with it, we'll just continue on the same fork and we'll hard fork and we'll have two different chains. It doesn't work, because the old chain will still have the ice age. It will go into effect and it'll die anyway.
Yeah, and that's why they keep leaving the ice age in, because it creates this omnibus bill, this must-have to include any other changes. I did want to make one other comment on MEV, because I do think it is a very important topic for miners and pool operators to educate themselves on. MEV is not just extracting those fees that DeFi is willing to pay to get their transaction orderings. Taken to its fullest extent, it is the pool actually, whatever arbitrage transaction DeFi is willing to pay so much for, it's the pool actually putting that transaction in themselves. That's where the real extra value is.
MEV searcher.
Yeah, when the pool then does that on behalf of the miners, or a split between the miners and themselves, they're in the best position to get that in, because they can block anybody else trying to make the same arbitrage. And then it truly is miner extracted value. And that's what Micah did a good job of saying. Miner extracted value just means it's value that miners, being the pools or whoever is the node that's mining, are in the best position to extract from the network.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
I wanted to ask one question as far as the MEV topic or whatever, because miner extracted value is kind of difficult to define, because as a whole, as a miner, all of the value that we're extracting, so there's additional value, correct? And then secondary to that, when we're talking about DeFi, can you give an example of that? And does that include specifically like layer 2 stuff where you're depositing into a DeFi application, or does that only apply to something along the lines of like Uniswap? Does that, maybe I don't have a quite full understanding. Can you, if anybody can clarify?
This is getting into the realm where I can't claim to have done all the depth of research. What I understand is that most of that is essentially arbitrage opportunities between two price points on transactions, but that's as deep as I've gone on actually understanding the specific mechanics of it. And that's
for sure.
This entire panel of miners really hasn't paid attention to that, where there's an entire other part of the Ethereum community that is talking about this every day, day and night, and understands it in and out.
Yeah, I mean, I've had all of 6 hours researching it after that call. And essentially it does have to do with the arbitrage that's going on the network, but there's two components. There's like a block producer component of it, and then there's a component that has to do with some aggregation and the ordering. So there's like an ordering function as part of their responsibility, and it's extracting value on both of those. So where you can see and can order the transactions, you're trying to include those in the list. So like, and we'll have some, I will try on the next call that we do, we'll have a representative on there, because I think it'll be very beneficial for us to all learn too. But from what I've ascertained is the way we normally order sort is usually on transaction value from top to bottom. We will have essentially 3 things post EIP 1559 that we should order sort on, right? I mean, right now we get everything, so it's irrelevant. But when we go to do this, it'll be transactions, it'll be this MEV, I would call it a mix. And then there's the minor tip, right? The inclusion fee. There's also inclusion. I don't like that the fact that they're using inclusion, because there's also an inclusion on orphans, and they literally call that inclusion. So now it's going to be kind of a mix, because there's like the orphan inclusion. That's why sometimes you'll see in some blocks, it'll say our reward transaction plus orphan inclusion. Yeah. And if they include it in from the previous block, and if they go several blocks without it, it degrades, right? So you'll see sometimes that are like 0.25, some are like 0.0375. Like it degrades over blocks that are if the person isn't aware that there's an orphan in a previous block, they're not including it. But long story short, that's also called inclusion. So I don't know if they're just going to collapse those together or what, but when this becomes a thing where we're going to have to make sure that they're doing it, they're going to have to set that up to look at those 2 elements to when they're order sorting, because there might be an instance where they're paying a higher transaction fee that's going to be burned. And then if you're doing the order sort based on transaction fee, and then think of like Excel, where you would have like 3 columns where you're doing your filter sorts, where you would have your transaction fees that are going to be burned. You're going to have this MEV new column that's taken some delta of that. And then you're going to have minor tips. So they're going to have to order it to where you might have a circumstance where you're looking at that Excel sheet, this is the whole mempool. You can only fit so much in a block. So then they're going to go, the people that are doing it good, if they just took it from transaction value and minor tip, may not include the right MEV. So they're going to have to get it to where it's the right mix, to where you're processing it in a specific way. And this is my 6 hours of research, so there's probably a lot more to it. That's why I want to have Micah come in, but like that's what I've been able to pick up so far.
If you can get somebody on the next meeting, that would be greatly appreciated. One of the comments that kind of threw me for a loop, us talking about MEV from, again, our favorite Georgios, was miners don't need to be concerned with MEV. They just need to know they're getting paid because of it. Now, for me, the at-home miner, I just want to make sure this is crystal clear to me, right? So considering my analogy about the fast pass, being MEV, and basically whatever the amount is that person's paying for the fast pass, so the DeFi space, we're getting a percentage of those MEV plus, whatever transaction stuff like that. My question is, what can we do as at-home miners to ensure, hey, Ethermine, hey, this pool, that pool, are you guys implemented? Are you guys set up to handle this correctly? Should we just get out there and voice and talk with our pool operators and see if they're preparing or getting set up for this before London?
Yeah, I mean, I think there should be, just like the Stop EIP and then the Pro EIP websites. I think of if it's one of them doing it, if it's we talk to Chris at FlexPool and they want to, since they're a pool operator, create, because I think they created the Stop EIP 1559 to talk. Let's set up something like that. See if they want to take the stewardship of doing it and capturing it, since they're going to be able to talk pool to pool language. And it might make sense for them to, because they're all going to be it's a fair market competition, right? But it's not fair market competition like you're trying to, knock off the next guy, really, as much as you want the ecosystem to be semi flat, from a participation standpoint, because you want multiple pools out there, because you want geographic connections. You want people to be, some pools to be in Atlanta, you want some pools to be in New York, you want some pools to be in Shanghai, right? You want to have a very vibrant pool community before you don't have stealth shares and stuff. So, if they take that as an owner, and have a site that's tracking it, just like we're tracking what pools are signed up, I think it's one of those things, you build it, they will come type of thing, to where they're going to have every incentive to figure out if they don't know what it is, and we can kind of work with Micah and the group, because I think it helps them on their position on 1559 anyways. The more we understand it, the more it helps, the transition to get those pools to maybe flag for it, and now we have a path forward, and that'll help on that transition.
I did just want to take the moment to say that from a marketing and optics perspective, the choice of stop 1559 as a banner to fly under probably hurt us as miners, because as we've talked about on this call, most of us really aren't trying to stop the purpose in the spirit of 1559. We're asking to be considered in the effects and to look at other ways to achieve that same purpose, either as part of change to 1559 or in parallel to it. So just wanted to make that comment.
Yeah, I understand that.
I think at the same time, though, it's weird that they aren't taking it into account, considering the amount of hash power that's been stated to go against it. So it's kind of odd that it's just being ignored.
Yeah.
So bringing it up from the perspective for the benefit of the network and saying, hey, have you considered this, and not getting an answer of yes, we've considered it, is kind of concerning, just from the perspective of like being an investor in Ethereum.
Yeah, I can say also, as far as, so what David's saying about optics and branding and such, just a suggestion, maybe a strong suggestion though, to Carter, when he does have an opportunity to meet up with this group again, maybe instead of using the word compromise, which I think we've all established is apparently a trigger, right? It's a trigger for that group. They're like, compromise? No, they dig their heels in. Maybe instead frame it as an existential threat. Just like let them know, like, hey, you don't want to be ETC'd, do ya? Just like maybe try to position it more strongly if possible.
I think the arrogant statement that somebody brought up earlier, I think Max Voltage did, was we could never be ETC. We would never get to that point. We can never be ETC, so it can never happen to us. And it's always one of those situations where you think it can never happen to you, and then it winds up happening to you, and you were like, well, damn. Yeah, so about that. But yeah.
Well, shucks, what do we do now?
Yeah.
Right. Or you get it to a point where you've disenfranchised all the miners, they go on the other networks, and the only thing you have left is your centralized miners and big giant commercial grade mining farms. And now they're pointed all at nice hash. You're screwed.
So if I could just say this, because I doubt they ever watch it, but just in case they do, to Georgios and AFAB, I respect your positions. I understand why you hold that position. Ethereum came out with the premise that they will go to proof of stake. I just want you to understand that we are willing to work with you. I just ask that you try to work with us.
We're the necessary evil at this point, that they're trying to end of life. I mean, it's not that they had a social, like Carter says, it's not like they had a social contract saying that they were going to use miners forever,
Yeah, but they can't, there's this vision to move to this 2.0, but it's like folks get ahead of themselves and it's not ready. So you're still part of that ecosystem. We're still part of that ecosystem, and there's a security thing there. So to be overzealous on the attitude, it does concern me sometimes. And as an investor, I'd be concerned that, hey, I got a miner here, explaining, has done some research, is asking for their critical eye on that research, poke holes, let's have a conversation, and then that's the kind of attitude we get met with. That's not it's like I've had a lot of developers work for me on different programs, and some that you just don't put in front of the customer type of thing, and they're super smart people, very nice, but they're just not communicators. And that's sometimes what happens, I think, where you have a very strong technical position, and it's not talking down on an engineer, but that's just not like their day job type of thing. And they're looking at it in a very myopic engineering argument, and they're not looking at the greater situation and having a bigger holistic view of what's going on. I look at it from, we all have to look at it from what's the layout of the ecosystem in general. I mean, what other coins are doing what's Ethereum doing, what's Profitability, are our rigs running? We have a lot of different elements going on that we're tracking, and they might be just looking at a release, right? So like, you know, a lot of the folks that are on there are maybe good spirited, have the right you know, path for whatever vision they're trying to work towards, but they got to understand the greater situation here, and not having spatial awareness of what makes up your security layer and your risk factoring is not good. Like, you need to have a more appreciation of what happens when you pay too less. And it only takes, it's like, oh, didn't pay enough, and now we have a situation. And the unfortunate thing is, and it's what NiceHash comes out and says, hey, we can't track if we're where the endpoints of these are. They could be going to a proxy. Most of them have been gone to proxies before. Looks like it's going to a mainnet. They're routing the hash to an offline node. They have a longest chain, and then they just wake it up and it happens to be longer, and their double spend has occurred, right? So like, where they can know it's going, I would kind of argue that I think if I got under the covers there, I could probably give them some indicators if we started seeing a huge centralization of hash. But you know, if they do, they're just going to make the attack more sophisticated, where they're going to different IPs in different areas, and they're all routing back to the same address, right? So, you know, I would say a less sophisticated actor might centralize that power. A sophisticated actor is going to have it in 8 different data centers, and then broadcast the chain. So, you know, was not posed as a threat today. It was more of that risk, like, hey, you guys are not tracking these couple of scenarios, and we have a descending price right now in ETH, right? So, you know, like, the descending price doesn't slow down the activity on this. That's the thing. It's like, that's the thing nobody's tracking. Like, the descending price is going to be a moot point for DeFi folks. Yeah, there's going to be some prices that'll come down, but when you start going like, oh, I can get into Uniswap now, and hey, it's $8. You know, like, and it only cost me $12 to transact, not $150. You're going to have a huge amount more fees come up, which means our block yield is going to be a lot higher. So like, you know, and then now if you're taking that block yield that's even worth less and you're cutting it, the cut's going to be a lot deeper, and it literally will just unfactor like up to 70+% of the network. And if I think I have one model in there now, I need to update the other side of the growth of hash, but because, you know, if price is going down quite a bit, even if yield's going up, there's a tail off on hash power, right? It's going to start to come down. It's not going to keep growing, and I have in the model that it keeps growing. But where I'll come back in and do that algebra to adjust to more break even for like the average rig person, and that's where I'll base it on, is like an RX 580 rig that's break even, because that means the 5700s will still be profitable and a few of the other ones. That's where we're going to start to tell off hash rate. You know, those models should show us kind of a view, and, you know, not all of them are going to be right. There's probably only going to be one that's even close, right? But if that is, I'm going to try to set that narrative to where it's not going to be a question. It's literally a forecast. We'll keep popping in actuals every week into the spreadsheet, and we'll have a latest estimate of risk, right? Just like a normal finance. This is me putting my finance hat on, right? So that's the way I would forecast my risk. I used to have to do this for like my day job. I used to do all the pricing for the Northeast and Anheuser-Busch. So if you live in the Northeast and you are buying beer at a discount between the years of 2005 to 2008, I was the guy that set your pricing. So I had a $500 million budget there, and I would look at price elasticity. I would look at a lot of these kind of figures. That's this kind of model is doing just with hash rate and what people are paying, you know, what our profitability is. I'm using the same kind of principles behind it. And you can run Monte Carlos with this kind of data eventually and see what your probabilities will be. based on the historicals. And, historical data, just like we say with was the number going to go up, historicals don't necessarily define future gains, but I'm going to tell you that doesn't necessarily apply with hash because it's a lot more snapped to the realities. If hash rate's X and our yield and our price is a certain point, it's a matter if we turn on our rig and turn off. It's a lot more linear. So the forecasting models that are out there that I built for it are premised around what the realities are with a miner. And that, I think that's the part that's missed. They're just missing that math as like, oh, it's just a forecast. It's like, no, bro, like this is what happens. Like I'm gonna either have this rig on or not based on our price point. And that's what that's forecasting. So you can keep aware of it and find out if we need to do something. And one of your trigger points should be just increase the block reward, and it's a moot point. And I'm gonna try to nail that in like it's going to be unquestionable, and just keep belaboring that point.
If you get into the meeting, the next one, I noticed that Chris from Flexpool mentioned a poll and they asked him to link it. You didn't bring up the poll that we did on Twitter. Could that have been used, or could that be beneficial to you? The one that I put on?
It's another data point. The thing with polls, especially on Twitter, they're gonna take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Because like non-scientific, it's like straw poll type. But here's my issue with polls is we've done carbon votes with freaking blockchain, so you could at least tie it to an address and a spend, right? And they still didn't do that with ProgPow. So the decision or the behavior or the weighted interest type of thing that's going to relate the information into a poll, I think they're dismissing. What I'm trying to do is use data that is inadmissible of opinion, right? Like this isn't a matter of my opinion. This is a matter that if your hash rate's here and your incentive drops too much, you're at risk. There's no question.
So it's like
there to attack your network.
Go ahead, Brian.
Well, just I'm going to add one other thing is like, why they would be a little dismissive over a poll too, because they don't know how much of an echo chamber you just put that into. Is it a GPU only, mining echo chamber? And they're going to be like, oh no, forget all that. It's like trying to ask, something about Bitcoin in a Bitcoin echo chamber. They're gonna be like telling you that Bitcoin's the only way. That's you get the maximalist viewpoint. So, they're gonna look at if some of these polls are you against 1559. Well, then you're talking to maximalist miners.
Yeah, and I mean the argument ends basically by just saying they aren't even acknowledging the amount of pools that have announced that they're against it. So
yep,
I think that all of that just doesn't matter anymore.
So when Stop 1559 came out and the day that all of those pools were slowly making their announcements and going into that column, because it started with just Flexpool in that column, and Chris has done a lot of work, and I would consider Flexpool as an activist pool, which has some good and some bad traits, but it does get action kind of happening. When the day that happened, the devs were talking about that, and they were, at first dismissive, and then the majority of the hash rate went over, and there was a panic that went over the room in the discussion. But the direction that panic took was, okay, the majority of the pools are against this. What can they do? How can they attack us? How can they hurt us? And they enumerated it, and they came up with some attack scenarios, and they looked at it and they said, yes, they can definitely do this attack scenario. And they were a little more panicked for a minute. And then they said, well, you know what? If they do that, we're just going to fork to 2.0. And that was where it stopped. That was the last time they gave any serious consideration.
I don't think they can fork to 2.0 that fast. I just don't think they can do it fast enough to cover their losses or cover their asses.
Yeah, they've said that they would maybe even have to go offline if they had to rush it. Like it would be like a week offline of doing the migration, because the migration is the biggest challenge.
Yeah. Exactly, because they got to have to teach everybody what they need to put into their new contracts.
And what do you think that would do to the ETH value?
Yeah, they're basically not being stewards for their investors. Like take the miners out of the equation. The miners don't even matter at this point. The investors and the people that are actually holding ETH are the people that they say they care about. But if that's the decision they're going to make to push that through, then I don't think that's true either.
And what we're talking about here is the inflation rate is 4%, right? Between 4 and 5%. That's it. And they're squabbling over that 4%. And what BBT said today was, hey, what about this? Very clear, raising it to 3%. That would still make it less inflationary. It's a good solution that decreases the risk and shuts a whole bunch of miners up. That's good for everybody.
Well, yeah, and they're gonna get the benefit. I kind of gave AFAB the thunder there with, and again, it's putting the AD hat on the marketing company that used to sell beer. It's the same way with the burn is going to be like Joker sitting on the pile of cash and burning it, right? It's about sending a message. The fact that you have those high spike periods and you're able to burn 25 of a 27 coin block reward, and you can get to blast on Twitter, hey, we burned $9 million of inflation today. If ETH, as ETH sets right now, if it's at 2 coins per block, you're talking 15-second blocks, you're talking 4 per minute. That's $15,000 at $1,500, or roughly almost $15,000 per minute, right? So if we're talking, it's $30,000 right now with a 4 reward, which is the 2 extra coins we're getting per block right now. They're burning $15,000 a minute at a minimum set right now. That's going to sum up, and there's going to be Twitter bots tied to it, calculating it, and it's going to be all marketing, bam, bam, bam. Even though the real impact is supply, even if it becomes a little deflationary, the messaging is going to be, hey, we're burning. Look how much money we're saving from potential sells. I know that if I was on that flip side, that's that way, I'd be selling the hell out of it, right? I'd be Twitter botting it. There'd be an entire page that had unicorns on it saying, money destroyed today. Look at me, gets the Fed,
but
right?
You can almost sit there and look at how they do it in Venezuela. I mean, the people are throwing it away in the garbage, and it's still not helping.
Well, yeah. Going along that, there's one thing that they talked about at the very, very end was the L2 solutions. I don't know a lot about it. What I think I know about it was these are like subchains that will add capacity. David, can you kind of add to that and talk a little bit about that? And what the timing is, what I'm really curious about is, could this actually start to take place about the same time 1559 goes into place, meaning the whole problem is moot?
I really can't, unfortunately. I mean, there's a lot of work that happens is happening on L2 chains and L1s, and there was a post on Reddit within the last couple of days that basically said, Ethereum, you've got a marketing problem. The only people who understand.
You muted.
Yeah,
sorry.
Unfortunately,
I think I did that. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Unfortunately, you really can't. I can't say a whole lot about L2. I can't deep dive it, but there was a post on a Reddit post a day or two ago, and its premise was, ETH, you really have a marketing problem and an education problem, because the only people who know anything about all the L2 solutions and the very complicated mechanisms and linking backend settings in MetaMask and everything else you have to do to set up L2 solutions are the devs and the people deep in it. And that really you need to make that something that people understand to have it solve the problem. And again, I could speak about it, but I wouldn't be speaking authoritatively about it. I don't understand it at a deep enough technical level to pretend to try to educate anyone else on it. But that is a thing that's out there. It's kind of a patch to what 2.0 is actually supposed to have in order to increase transaction capacity and address everything else. But it's clunky, and it's not something the bulk of users are going to use. One question I've really had as I've looked at all this 1559 debate over the last couple weeks is the UX. 1559 has been trotted out as a UX improvement, but I've really wondered how much of that is actually a UX improvement for someone who's going into MetaMask, going into a wallet, and sending a transaction in ETH, and how much of it is a UX improvement for the bot or UX improvement for the DeFi trading algorithm, because I don't see the former really being the major issue, with the one exception being the classic stuck transactions. Hey, fee suddenly started going up right after I sent my transaction. Now I got to wait around to see if it bails out. And I have a habit of sending all of the ETH out of a particular wallet to another wallet. So when that happens, it's very terrible because I don't have enough ETH to bump the gas fee up. So.
Yeah, so I can't speak authoritatively either, but on the topic of layer 2 scaling solutions, you guys may recall last call that we did, just on the retail side, on the consumer side, it makes sense to me. It makes sense to me that they should be adopted without naming names of projects that are outside of the ETH core developer team. There are some projects that are already building scaling solutions and that are creating decentralized exchanges a la Uniswap, right? Essentially copying Uniswap's code base and then adapting it to their implementation of some kind of a roll up or layer 2 implementation. And guess what? They're smoking Uniswap. Even their valuation is 10x what Uniswap's has been because they're solving that problem now. Now the breadth of projects that they support is not there yet, but I mean this is happening, right? That's the problem with decentralized systems and permissionless systems is that anybody can build on them, right? So if somebody is faster to a reasonable execution on using some of these protocols that are published, right, for layer 2 implementations, then they win. And it's already kind of happening. So
yeah,
well, again, without teaching.
I'll jump in there a little bit. So there is some L2 in process. It's pretty new. Loopring is one of them. Uniswap's still a couple months away. I think they're about to get part of MetaMask's DEX aggregator is looking at, and they're going to do it through an airdrop too, I believe. So if you haven't used that, that might be like a shameless plug to use that aggregator on a cheap night, just even if it's just for one thing, just to get your accounts flagged. So shameless plug there for that. So there is some already in flight. It hasn't really kind of been the de facto standard. And part of the counter of that is like, oh, well, you're just circumventing the miners on the transaction fees. And I mean, I think collectively at this point, you're not going to hear it from me yelling at the top of the thing, because I just think it's a terrible user experience right now. And if some of those fees, even like 30%, move over to that L2, and we can get a lot more users and more value proposition for ETH, we catch it on both the yield and we catch it on the price side, right? So if something is going to promote the activity and price and buying of ETH, we win. If they're using a whole bunch, unfortunately, we also win. And right now we have a little bit of both with the big jump. But yeah, looping. So it's loop, RING. If you look that up and Google that, that's a L2 solution. I think somebody in the chat actually talked to it. I wrote down 3 things to try to incentivize one of the ETH devs, or if I get on the core dev call next week, I'm gonna at least have the talking point at the end there to see if we can, kind of bridge the gap on some of the gap of knowledge, and have like Micah or somebody on to talk MEV explanations and some of the question answers, and then what's it going to take for layer 2 on some of these transactions, and can people rudimentarily do it right now, and what's a good resource, and that might be just even a website we're not aware of, type of thing. So I think both of those things will be good ads if we can get them on here.
Well, and that's my question still that I don't understand. Is MEV specifically only related to layer 2 solutions, or does that also affect layer 1 or like Uniswap or whatever?
That's a good question. I believe that MEV type of transaction stuff is still going to happen on even layer on even POS. It's just the concept of mining is gone, because it's all about like proposal acitation and rounds and stuff when it comes to proof of stake. I don't know how they're going to extract anymore. Like if you go out to Beacon right now and you look, they're earning rewards. And this is it's funny. I tweeted that out last night, and I think got a couple ETH developers. I think I tweeted it to Peter or Flav, I think's the guy's name. And I'm like, hey, is the is the ETH2 beacon chain, because people have earned money. It's about 0.25 ETH per staker out there. Is that being calculated in the current ETH supply? And he responded and said, no, shh, with the emoticon, with the, holding up the icon, trying to shush me. And that's an interesting dynamic too, of like, there's these folks that have locked up stuff, and if that stuff keeps slipping, they're just going to keep that supply is going up. So I was trying to get to a point of like, is part of this behavior also because you're dual inflating the network right now, and you need to tail it off some on our side for the stakers that have put up all this cost and value that can't now unlock their coins. They want to have that value proposition to when that flips over to them, that we haven't pulled all the value out of it. But that's, I think, another good question. Hopefully we can get both a layer 1 guy and a layer 2, and maybe there might be different nights because of the, crossing streams things with them. I think both of them would be information, that would be good, because right now I haven't staked. I have chose not to stake. I didn't want to lock it up, and it was purely not on the premise that I don't believe in ETH long. I believe on what I know from their development cadence. And I think if they finally put a date on something that's 2 years, it's going to be 4. So, I just was like, well, a lot of things can happen in 4 years. There's going to be another halving from Bitcoin. Ravencoin will go almost through 2 of them. Like, I don't know what the market's going to look like then. And I don't know if people have that kind of tolerance to wait another 4 years. So I don't know if people have tolerance to wait 2 years. So I was worried about that. So getting somebody on there to like explain kind of where things are at and where things are tracking, I think would go far. I mean, if you look at any of those ETH dev meetings, you look at any of the ETH cat herders meetings, they usually average 150 people. We hit almost 2,000 today. So that should, from a signal analysis, they should see that, hey, either one, the people building on your network don't give 2 Fs on what your release schedule is, or 2, the communities, you think that is a huge support on your side versus the actual community that's grassroots and shows up to talk to issues. It's more than a 16x factoring just from the spatial awareness of what's available on YouTube of people showing up. I've never seen on any, and this goes with every proof of work switch over to proof of stake chain out there. Who's going around and talking about Saya or Decred or Dash anymore, really? And Dash is a hybrid even. But and I liked Dash. I had no problem with Dash, but it's like as things started to kind of move, X11 went to full ASIC, it's just the communities collapse, and it's a lot more about like features, and you only have you don't have huge communities like this. So getting people to come in here to talk ETH2, getting people to talk some of these other features, I think would be good in this format for, our different audiences can ask questions and stuff, and maybe give them some exposure. And indirectly, maybe we can want to be one of the better sources out there to get information out. I don't know how many is on your guys' channels watching right now. I had 472 watching this live stream. I know most of us are simulcasting in some way. Collectively, I know last time we did this, collectively we're over 2,000 people concurrent watching. That's a pretty high engagement. The mining spreadsheet blew through 137,000 API calls. Now, part of that was my crappy job the first round on getting the API set up, but we're still averaging around concurrently a day, almost 100,000 people hitting the mining spreadsheet. There's a lot of engagement. And I think if we can tap some of these resources, we can actually be a positive steward in this, and ironically give them a lot more exposure to what they're thinking that they're doing by making changes to the network. Let's open it up to you guys if you guys think that too.
So go ahead. You go, David.
I think it's an opportunity for an olive branch.
Come on, man.
For sure. Because that did come up in some of the 1559 discussion. Some of the 159 discussion is essentially, what is the 2.0, what does the POS transition look like? And there were specific questions from the devs. How do we better educate miners? How do we better make sure that they're aware of what's planned as dates do become more formal, how they can get involved, how they can still make money on 2.0, and then what the features are, what mining looks like. They're talking right now about the mining transition plan. There's a discussion out there right now about starting POS and then allowing mining to continue to make money for some amount of time to make that transition nice and smooth. And miners actually will be just mining empty blocks, but getting paid out so that they are not incentivized to resist POS. They have time to transition over without having any kind of access to do any damage. That's just a proposal, but there's a lot of desire to interface with the mining community, educate them, and help bring them into the whole ETH ecosystem. If we can help them do that, particularly you guys that have the channels, if you can help them do that, I expressed my interest to help that in as many ways as I can. I think it's just better for the entire community, and it may result in more respect for the mining community as we go through these critical next year or 2 or 3 or 7 until they get where they're going.
Yeah, my problem with that is having a responsibility to the people that view the channel. And the fact is to say that we should just be holding on to some singular coin in some hopes that it goes up in price is irresponsible.
That's probably true. I think several times today there have been parties that have said, hey, I speak for this group, and so I have to look out for their interests above all else. I'm wondering if we'll use the trigger word just once here behind closed doors. I wonder if a good compromise is for the miner extracted value, and maybe this is more something to bring up with pools, maybe pool operators, but having the miner extracted value be something that is ideally fed back into the ecosystem in a meaningful way, vis-a-vis DeFi or some DeFi instrument, or powering some L2 development somehow that does help to align interests better, but specifically having it roll into Blind Run, you realize you're the main featured video on my stream. That's why you did all that, didn't you? I'm flattered. No, it really was good. But but I'm wondering if MEV, if maybe a thread that like I mentioned before, maybe an olive branch that can be extended, maybe, and it has to be in conversation with pool operators as they do the implementation. Have MEV be something that turns the mining community, helps them resemble stakeholders in the mainline interests of the ecosystem, more so than just having it be like, all right, well, profit for me to quickly scalp. Spitballing, guys. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll echo what Sun said there is, like, I guess it all comes down into the presentation and what's the intention. One of its intentions is education. And I mean, I don't mind learning more on something that works and it makes me make an informed decision. But I think I would predicate that initial engagement is like, hey, no financial advice. Do not, do your research. This isn't to try to, pump these bags in any capacity, but like, we're trying to get a better understanding of the way this is going to work. And then we talk our positions ahead of it, right? Like I come in there and say, hey, I haven't staked. And I stated my reasons why, but as I start to understand more, I think for me, it's more of execution driven than promise. I mean, I would want to see them at 1.5. I would want to read through the execution strategy on how they're going to, move things over and change state. Because I heard we talked earlier that somebody was like, well, we just power down. It doesn't, unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. You got nodes, you got miners. It would be an abrupt change, like the DAO hack. I mean, people are still mining, right? And then it created Ethereum Classic. And then people kind of just went with it. Like, I'm not going to change. I don't like these terms, and we're just going to continue with it. It's the same thing as like, if this was a deep enough poison pill where it was really existential, they're not going to do the block reward. They don't care. Enough pools and node operators and developers could get together and fork this currency, keep it going, and they can fork off the ice age. It's not, there is no like a master key that they have. It's a matter of, do you have the right size and support on all the elements you're going to need to uphold a chain? And you're going to have to organize, you have to have, clients, somebody would, so the reason why they're so confident that it's not just about the miners is because they know the level of effort that's needed to have the clients, right? So there's different ways to interface with the cryptocurrency chains. Ethereum has a whole bunch of clients. They have a Java client, they have, JS, they have Python with Viper, .NET client with Ethermine, right? They have a lot of different implementations. And so that if you take that responsibility of hard forking that currency, you not only have to do the ETH core dev protocol level of responsibility, you also have the client responsibility. And even if you said, hey, we're going to fork this is going to be the miners chain, we are cloning essentially all the DeFi stuff. So you're going to now have two of everything. There's going to be the miner version of Uniswap. You have all of that ecosystem that either comes with it or you sunset all those other features. Because they're just going to die on the chain and all you're caring about is layer one. You would still need to pick your few clients that are sticking around. You'd need the people to pick up all that. So it's not a matter that we can't mechanically fork it. It's just all that other overhead that comes with it. So that's why they're confident in that, well, they might be able to fork it and they may be even able to turn off the ice age on that, but they won't have a client team and they won't have a communications team and all the other stuff that holds up ETH. So, having, the people that are part of those client teams and better educate people through, our channels, if we would take those opportunities to open it up, I would much rather do it in a more general, broader forum, because I think we're stronger as a group than as individual channels when it comes to this kind of subject. Of course, we could take the information that's garnered in one of those type of bigger meetings, pool that information, and then do one-off videos for our independent communities if we felt that it made sense. But I think we're at a point, an inflection point, that we could actually come out as not second-class citizens in this. We could come out as the stewards that help the transition, because I think we organize better, quite frankly. Like we're having a cordial conversation here, and trying to give them the benefit of the doubt because we know they're not on the call. And that's I think a testament to this group here. And we have our, our strength, our opinions of certain, people, but we're also trying to give them the benefit of the doubt of their focus of, the way they're putting us in a box. And I think that'll set us a tone to the way the behavior really should be working, and maybe hopefully teach people some manners on some stuff too. I mean, it's, we're not to be kicked around on it, and they're breaking a very powerful asset that they have from a grassroots community standpoint. And I've been beating that drum since the Feather coin in 2013. The power of community is huge. And the power of community is what helped build Ethereum. We all know we were part of it. The folks that have been mining it had been part of it, had talked to our brothers and sisters and cousins and uncles and everybody else. And then they talk to people. There's a one-to-many connection on all that stuff. You're doing it at the mining level, right? Like, you're going to walk in and start talking about protocol stuff to people, like they're going to be lost. So if somebody walks into your house and sees a miner and goes, what the hell is that? Hey, is that a new RTX? Yeah. And then you have a conversation. We are like Mr. Miyagi organically explaining a crypto network to somebody without even understanding that we're explaining a crypto network to somebody. So like that's a resource. And, I think that's part of the things that are untold when we're having those conversations. I know when I was having that conversation today, that was going through my mind. It was like, we do a lot of effort, not just explaining the platforms and the various platforms and how things work. We're also stewards of the community. And to take that kind of approach that, I don't see anybody else doing this kind of stuff. So like, they should lean into it, and hopefully bringing them on a channel, like this kind of format, I think will get some awareness that can be brought back to some of those all core dev meetings, you know, when they're in a room together and like, hey, you know what, those mining dudes aren't that bad, actually. They're pretty cool. And they're going to help us out. And we think it might be a good thing. And maybe we should think about things a little differently, you know? So we'll see. I'm an optimist, bros. It could be the worst thing in the world. And I'm still going to look at like, well, you know, that asteroid's going to hit us, but, you know, at least we'll be able to hang out. You know, like,
I think it'd be good if all the miner people that were representing the miner community were all on the same page. I think without going and naming names, let's just say that you and Roger, I think we're on the same page. So it would be good. And am I the only one that seems thought it was kind of strange that this MEV thing was just like thrown into this meeting when we've been talking about this for 3 months? And if that was an olive branch to throw out to miners, that it was only mentioned for the first time today. Has anybody else heard anything mentioned about that in the last 3 months?
Not in the past meetings. No, I have not.
No, I thought that I said that to somebody else today, that I felt like that was a hey, let's talk about MEV. There's some good points to it. Hey, it's going to reduce, if you really look at MEV, you can reduce the impact of this, but it was clearly a pre-discussed talking point. To elaborate on what Max Voltage had said, I do think miners have been hurt in this discussion. I'm not sure that there was a lot of ground to gain, and I'm not sure there still is a lot of ground that's going to be successfully gained, but miners have been hurt by being so fragmented in their interests. And I said that on the last time we had a call about 969. I said it's an option. I'm very familiar with it, and I'm happy to talk about why it's an option, but I don't think it's the best option. And it was for exactly that reason, because it has become clear, and even Michael made it clear in the previous call, there are competing interests there. And we're going to just end up with infighting within the miner community. And that's not a good way to get progress, even if some of us think that that would be a good thing for the overall network. So the more that the mining group can agree on a best path forward and represent themselves in unison, the better result we're going to get in any kind of discussion. And I'm looking forward, not just now, but to what could happen over the next 12 to 18 months. I have concerns that there is a precedent here, that there is a precedent that miners are not important in any way and not to be considered. And 1559 is now laying out that precedent, and there may be other changes ahead of the merge and ahead of POS, as people theorize on possible things that miners could do they don't like. They may decide to start pulling other rugs out from under us along the way, because they no longer consider miners to be important. And if that is the case, it would behoove us to be on the same page and coming from the same place in discussing those matters.
Yeah, and then just kind of expanding a little bit more, something that even Carter touched on a little while back, right when he was hearing about the EIP 1559, it kind of got underneath his skin right at first. And he's like, okay, if they're going to change the rules right at the end, you know, as they sunset the miners, you know, it's like, what really stops them from doing it to the stakeholders too? Changing the rules even on them. So it's like, how can the stakeholders feel safe that they're not going to get the rules changed on them? Because there is no social contract, as Carter would say.
Well, the only reason why I even brought that up is because there was a statement, and I don't remember which developer it was done on Twitter, but and it was, I think, backed up by AFAB, which is interesting to me, that there is no social contract with miners or the stakers, which was interesting to me. And that if the collective whole determined that there needed to be an adjustment to the reward structure, that they would just do it. And that they'll get slashed if they're out of because the way the mechanisms work, you know, the stakers that are mad can destake and leave, or they'll get slashed if they're not taking the proposal against the group, right? And I'm just like, man, that's not the way you run things, bro. Like, that is a horrible concept. And where miners have the ability to pivot, I mean, it's a crappy way to run things, but we can pivot. Like, you do that to somebody that's vested and locked into your coin, you're going to lose them forever. Like, we keep coming back and taking the beatings because the profitability is still going to swing us there. But there's miners I know that have not touched ETH anymore because of after the second time that rewards were pulled, and it went from 3 to 2, it was already kicking it down, right? Like it was barely profitable at 3, and then it went down to 2, and it did the exact opposite. And so some people are just like, yeah, you know what, never again, thanks but no thanks. And now I wanted to make sure it was very clear that if that's just a couple of people shooting from the hip and they're no say in this, and it's just them being that minds, being that kind of a person to say, well, we can change it with the stakers too. I'm like, hey, like mining, because of the way it's designed, it would be very hard to like launch a lawsuit or anything to that effect. It just wouldn't, it'd be very messy and very expensive. I think things change a little bit if you start really playing with the monetary policy on stakers, especially in some jurisdictions, because you're doing a fell swoop on the network. So while you'll probably be okay in the US, you might not be okay in the UK. And you got to like, they're getting into muddy waters when they start messing anything with monetary policy. I think we're going to get to a point where this is going to be one of the last, I think, phases to where they can actually do this as big money's coming into this. Like when we're talking 1.5 trillion across the whole market cap, I think monetary policy in general, and it's only going to take one to get a class action against them to then pause all of this kind of mid-flight changing stuff. And that's why I never really pushed hard on the ASIC side either, is because they had their point. They had their time to be able to do the ASICs before new stuff was taped out in 2018. That was missed. So now to do it now, that's why I wasn't in there beating on 969 or Prog POWs, because there are people that have bought, and there are companies that, in a silicon that have, orders, and it's a disaster. And if I was those companies, I know the way I would react to it. And I would look at my options legally to try to, stop that, because you're like, hey, you guys had this plan and now you're changing it. So I'm trying to put my head where the ASIC maker was at that period in time. And that's why I haven't really pushed for it. I mean, and it's different when the network is an existential risk, and we know that no GPU's profitable, then there's a network decision from a security risk standpoint, and then they could take that on for the greater of the good. And then there's a good chance the ASICs will either just get screwed over, or maybe they lock it up into core 2. Instances like Monero with like the bit streams, most of that stuff with the FPGAs, and people can rewrite bit streams. And it happened 3 times with the CryptoNight and then CryptoNight V7. And they just kept doing it, and then finally they went to RandomX, right? So Ravencoin did it too. But I think we're getting to that point to where once the rules are set, it's going to be really hard to change them, just because we're getting into this more globally accepted, integrated JP Morgan and everybody being part of this, and it's all one big kumbaya world, where it's moving to more of a federated design than a centralized or a decentralized design. And not because the ecosystem and the rules are changing, it's because where the platforms are going to be running, where we all pretty much know that ETH 2.0, those nodes are going to be on clouds. If they're not on clouds, I'd question the people's understanding of, the uptime. If you're putting up ETH and it goes up to $10,000 in ETH, and now you have $320,000 in a single staked node, at $320,000, that's when you start looking at like Amazon Web Services with 5 nines uptime, right? Because you don't want any kind of slashing ability, or you get slashed. So if you have all of these networks now on large clouds, you've effectively federated the network to where there's a lot more influence that can come on from municipalities, from different laws, GDPR, all kinds of things now when you're on managed services side and not decentralized. It hasn't been answered on ETH 2.0. That's one of the questions I kind of wrote down here that I'd like to talk to some of those guys. I mean, are they even tracking that? Or are they just building this thing and it gets in ran somewhere else and they're not tracking it? There's some big questions I think that need to be answered from that risk standpoint, where people are touting decentralized, we're changing finance. But it's just like, no, bro, you're just an app running on a cloud, and you're going to be subject to the same kind of rules. And you're not really innovating now anymore because you could be shut down by, the UK or somebody. So I think a lot of questions will help get some of those things answered if we can actually get them into a room. And none of them are going to be, I think we got to be able to make sure that just like any of us, like no matter how much we're researched, none of us are like, quote unquote, like, I don't know. I don't consider myself an expert. I consider myself just here and been around for a while and had a few cycles. So I feel confident in certain things, and certain things I'm still learning. I think if we have any of them on, we premise it with, hey, we know you're not the decision maker, but you're a pretty smart dude in this spot, and we got some questions. And, just take some of that off the list to make them feel like they're not trying to talk on behalf of all that network. And I think we'll get some good responses if people are comfortable. Let you guys talk for a second.
Well, my response, like to sum it up, like when I was watching this morning with you, was most of these people are smarter than me. However, they know it and seem to use that as an excuse to ignore valid concerns. Yeah, that's how I felt about it.
That's pretty much how the posturing and the gesture. I think Nemesis was talking about it. Their posture and the gesture kind of
their body language said it all.
So, but I mean, Mr. Carter, I apologize if you had to mute me earlier. In summary, because it's getting late here on the East Coast. If you can somehow, because you have more sway than I do, a smaller channel, you can somehow get, X, Y, and Z to participate in an open discussion format such as this, I'd be down to listen and post questions. I would take notes again, because I'm still learning myself. Now, one thing I want to say in closing, first off, is gentlemen, thank you all for everything you do for the mining community. That's one of the reasons why I love the mining community, is because we all communicate, work together, share data, and information with each other, so that way we can, one, educate the masses or help promote. And one of the things that we promoted with much of our videos and content was Ethereum. So I don't think they're factoring in the amount of content that we produced on mining Ethereum, various miners, Claymore, Phoenix, T-Rex, every GPU testing and stuff like that. All that gets attention to the Ethereum network as a whole. So, I wish that small bit, even though it's insignificant to them, really matters to us. I wish that would be considered, as far as what does the miners contribute, because we contribute a lot. And, we already talked about security and a number of other things, but I mean, Carter, you spent a number of your time working on documents or Excel spreadsheets, providing a whole bunch of data, in which I'm trying to learn from it. I'm actually learning quite a bit between my full-time job, but that's a lot of time that you're not getting paid for. And I really appreciate what you have contributed to the community. I know we all have our own data and spreadsheets. Some of us has taken designs from others and kind of molded into our own. So, that's all time that we're all not getting paid for. We're sharing this data because we love the community. At least I love the community. And I just want to share the data and help other people out in this world. That's the way I carry myself. That's the way my mother raised me. And that's the way I'm going to continue to do so. And I just want to thank you and let you know that I appreciate you.
Sure, my dude.
And not to make light of the whole situation too. It's like, okay, ETH finally sunsets the miners. What are we going to benchmark our GPUs after? Because everybody's like, oh yeah, what does it mine? 31 mega hash. Oh,
Ravencoin.
But that's also sporadic a little bit too.
The standardized hash rate, like
right. We need a standardized hash rate.
Oh, 31 mega hashes. Oh, like on Ethereum. Oh yeah, like on Ethereum.
Yeah. Everybody benchmarks off of Ethereum. I mean, that's like the equivalent of all these extreme overclockers benching on what is it, Time Spy.
I'll just make a new chain called Review Coin.
Yes.
It's still Ethereum. It's still ETH hash. You can mine it. It's absolutely worthless. The only DeFi app is CryptoKitties, but we can get benchmarked.
Carter, you might know about this. Remember, you still use Benchmate at all to do any not mining, but just benchmarking your hardware? So like I still participate in hardware bot competitions and stuff like that, like overclocking enthusiasts. I know Nemesis and I were talking about offline, like LN2 overclocking and stuff like that. But I wonder if there could be a way, and David, maybe you could shed some light on this, because I do want to wrap this up because I'm getting tired. But if there's like a Benchmate type program, right, where you have all these different miners in it that can be like Nice Hash pulls the latest miners, or Awesome Miner pulls the latest miners into the program, and you can literally bench each algo. And like you talked about, even though it may not actually bring you any currency out of it, it could actually bench maybe the OG ETH hash or Dagger or whatever, Kapow, stuff like that. That'd be a really cool program, but I don't know anybody that could even make that bring that into fruition.
I mean, Nice Hash does that already, kind of,
yeah.
Has a benchmark mode.
Yeah, but
that's how they paid everybody back.
Look, I'm not going to get into it today.
Listen, I'm not going to go here.
I'm tired.
I mean, if we do get to a point where you've got a new generation of GPUs and nothing to mine on them, that's going to be a sad day, because I'm not going to be able to justify why I need to expense the newest GPU. So.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that reminds me. I did manage to score a 3060 off the Newegg Shuffle. So if anybody needs any data or anything like that, sorry.
Jealous, triggered.
I missed
oh
all
my
that.
God.
I'm really interested to run a couple tests. I've got prepared to find out just how strong that performance barrier is.
The lock.
Exactly.
How strong that handshake is.
Right. They put a challenge out that I think was super dangerous personally, but
yeah, and Ogata Girl had said on DCA's last Saturday night was I might be up for that challenge.
It's an interesting challenge. Exactly.
Everybody thinks the same, because they're like, it's unhackable. Like, how about that? That's not a word you should use.
Right. Can I get you guys to all go through, like, maybe in an order, and drop your info for people in my chat so they can go and follow you wherever y'all are at and that sort of thing?
Yeah, can you call it out on your stream, like the current setup, like what you have, and we'll go through it? Call it out.
What do you mean call? Okay, yeah. So first is Bits, and I think I've already linked Bits a few times, but Bits, go ahead and introduction.
Yeah, man. You guys can follow me on BitsBeTrippin on YouTube, Twitch. I finally got my Twitch stuff set up, so a lot of the deeper dive, this build actually I'm going to do on Twitch probably tomorrow, and then I'll bring a recap of it. This is a 14 card rig that you see me kind of putting together on the stream earlier. Here, I'll give you guys a quick preview actually, because it's actually almost ready to get put together fully here. I think I can switch my video source here to give you guys a little. There you go. So it's
Nice.
it's 4 3090s, 3 3060 Ti's, and the rest are all RTX 3070s. So I'm gonna get a lot of hate, obviously, for that. So it's gonna be 14 cards, just a mixed setup, and then I have another rig that's gonna be all 6900 XTs. Again, ordered like when everything first came out and finally showed up, but yeah, a lot of those kind of builds like that are usually done on something like Twitch, because it's long format like this. Might be 3 hours, and I'll take the recaps of those, put them on YouTube, just to kind of what the settings are and stuff like that. But yeah, BitsBeTrippin on Twitter also.
I feel like the 3070s are always the filler card right now. Max,
I'll use it because I have to.
Max.
Okay, so I'm new, so the only way you can find me on YouTube is actually if you do a search for Max Voltage and then do a filter on channel. I've got about 50 subscribers, so I'm just getting started. I have about, I don't know, 5 to 10 videos or something like that, but I'll be putting more content out there.
Can you link it in chat and I'll throw it over right now? Because I was trying to
if I can find it myself, sure.
I would like to add something.
He's big in the community, guys.
Yeah, I would like to add something before Son of a Text, which is over to the next person.
You got it?
He's new, but pretty knowledgeable dude, and he's been helping out in the DCA adventure and my streams and stuff. So
Van Mauld is the ID. Okay,
yep,
got
that's
it.
Thanks.
And next is Mr. Nemesis. Can't hear you.
You're muted.
Muted.
Stupid mute. So, yo, what's up, everybody? I am Nemesis from Crypto and Hot Rods. You can find me at Crypto and Hot Rods, where I'm very mining focused with hardware. I like to kind of think of myself as a hardware specialist, just because, you know, I love tinkering on physical things. I mean, I come from the world of hot rods and, you know, modern cars, so I'm used to dealing with computers, electrical stuff. I'm going to start doing some deep dives on doing repairs on GPUs that other miners have burnt up and stuff like that. I try to do as much testing as I can, just to kind of give people an idea of what they're, you know, what the miners will do with each card. I mean, a lot of the same stuff that BitsBeTrippin does, but you know, I don't have the whole software background like Bits does. So, I mean, I kind of take a look at it from the actual using standpoint. So I know how to manipulate what's already given to me, but I don't know how to write the stuff myself, which gives me a unique perspective of your average at-home miner. And that's the kind of viewpoint that I kind of get across, and then try to help everybody do, you know, kind of troubleshoot some of the hardware limitations that they're coming across. So.
Awesome. Next is DCA.
What is going on? Well, I'm Crypto Mikkel. I have my own YouTube channel, Crypto Mikkel. I also am one of the hosts of DCA Venture. Nemesis is also on there. You can find me there. DCA Venture, Crypto Mikkel. I do YouTube videos on like how-to tutorials on how to get up mining rigs just from the start, bare bones. On, you know, HiveOS, I mainly shoot for Linux operating systems, HiveOS, and all those other portables, as well as actual Linux GPU miner. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, can I get a link, by the way? I can't find your specific channel right now.
I got you.
I put it in the Zoom chat for mine. If you didn't,
I got yours already.
Okay, cool.
I've had it, and I thought I had Mikkel saved, but I'm having trouble pulling it up for whatever reason.
Got you.
That's Savage. I already have yours, Savage.
Who's next on yours?
It's going to be Mr. Serpent. Talk to you a lot on Twitter.
Yeah, man. Gotta stay in touch. So my name is Vega in real life, but my name is Serpent X. I have a channel called Serpent X Special Forces. I do a lot of YouTube content, but it's not just strictly crypto. I do like doing tech reviews, teardown, stuff like that. I'm really a hardware type of person. I like to get deep dives and figure out how to hardware, try to break things and fix it. But I'm not really too much of a software dev type person. That's where the other gentlemen in the stream come along. But you can find me on Twitter at SerpentXSF, YouTube, Instagram, all that. My handle is at SerpentXSF. All right. And you have you should have my channel, right? I'd be hurt. My feelings will be hurt if you don't have my channel, Son of Attack.
He's not going to say anything.
You're muted. You're muted.
Just take that as I didn't say anything. I've never heard of your channel. Nope. No, I got it linked, bro, already.
He's like, oh, I've been hurt.
Mr. David, anywhere you'd like to shout out or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, just so anybody who wants to get a hold of me for any reason knows, I'm David Stanfill. I'm on a lot of different Discords as GPU Hoarder, do hardware engineering, software development, silicon development, all kinds of things. I'm also on Reddit as David Stanfill, so that's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me if somebody wants to get a hold of me.
Just remember, everybody, he's GPU Hoarder. He has them all.
It's got him. All right, and Savage Mind, my dude.
What's up, guys? Hopefully you can hear me. I know I've been like super quiet the whole time, but I've just been taking it in because I wasn't able to be in the meeting today or the call. So I'm just kind of like soaking it in. I know that there's like minor extracted values, some new terms thrown in there. So I've got some research to do, but yeah, I'm Savage Mind on Twitter, YouTube, all that cool stuff. You guys are awesome. Thanks for having me here. It's amazing to see all these folks up here with me and or me with all these folks that I've been watching for so long. So this has been really awesome. So I really appreciate it.
Well, all y'all did a fantastic job, and my chat is saying to thank every one of you. So hopefully they'll reciprocate by following my links and giving you guys a little bit of subs.
You're gonna leave out Seth, Mind Your Biz?
Did I miss
Money
it?
Chamber?
Oh my god!
I thought you were saving loudest for last.
I knew you were on the call, and it's terrible. All right,
hey.
I'm a look. This is why Bits is the host. So Seth Estrada, I got your channel too. This is easy.
Well, hey, I really appreciate that. So to echo what Savage said, it really is a pleasure to have that large scale event happening. I mean, it kind of begs the question, why weren't we doing this for forever? Because this is awesome. But background here, watched Bits' stuff, watched actually a lot of your stuff, Blind Run, because Matt was he's more OG than a lot of people give credit. What you guys have built is just amazing. So I mean, I feel like a grifter by comparison when it comes to the mining content. I like making spreadsheets and testing old gear and trying to like make a penny squeal. That's kind of more my deal. If there's old hardware or it's something you don't expect, should mine. I like trying to get my hands on that kind of stuff and really go for the value play in mining. Just found hardware, or anybody who's wondering, can I turn spare compute cycles into money? And I like approaching it from that perspective. My content these days is a lot more focused on user data privacy and getting into crypto and not getting wrecked. So like Blind Run did on his channel, talking about rotten seeds, talking about potential exploits, to be involved in crypto today, especially during a bull run now, where the bad actors, they know that if they can find crypto wallets, they're going to make out better than ever before, right? So security is paramount. Privacy is just a part of that. User data privacy is just a part of that. So that's where a lot of my content is headed right now. But proof of work, man, this is what powers the whole thing. Kind of underscoring what our whole conversation's been about the whole time. Anybody who loses sight of proof of work, they don't get it, right? Hashcash, Adam Back's contribution to Bitcoin, and adding proof of work to digital currencies. That's why we're here at all. That's why any of us has a portfolio that includes cryptocurrencies at all. So I definitely, at every opportunity, I pay my respects to mining at any scale. If you're doing it on a Raspberry Pi, or if you're doing it with an airplane hanger full of your own custom FPGAs or whatever, with custom bit streams, don't care. Everybody in between, you're contributing in a meaningful way. So that's my take on it.
Awesome, dude. And yeah, the security is super important. Mr. Mining Chamber, last but not least, are you here?
Can't hear you if you're talking, buddy.
Can you hear me guys now?
No, we can.
Okay, awesome. So thank you guys, first of all, for having me in the call. It's been awesome. I'm just like Savage Mind here, soaking it all like a sponge, and now I'm like a wet towel right now. It's completely filled with information. But yeah, it's been great learning from all of you guys' opinions. And as an introduction, my name is So. I run the channel Mining Chamber, and mainly for just step-by-step guides and getting newcomers in GPU mining and getting them going. I gotta admit, like, all of you guys' content are amazing, and son of a tech, your videos lately have been killing it, like such informative content. And yeah, thank you guys for having me here. Definitely such a learning experience.
Get it. All right, guys. Did I miss anybody this time? I'm going to be more cautious.
No, you got everybody.
I think we got it. All awesome, guys. Thanks for
All
being
good.
on the call, and thanks for putting this together, Bits, man.
For sure. Yeah.
And
Well, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, thanks for representing minors. That definitely didn't seem like an easy task this morning. I was watching and I had to calm down. I won't lie, because it seemed pretty rough. So thank you for doing that.
For sure.
Yeah. It was fun. There was a few points that I was, usually I'm pretty calm and collective, and I try to take it on. My biggest thing is on time boxing. I start to say a lot, and I'm going through a lot that I want to answer, but I know I was going to be time boxed, so that's probably the hardest part of that.
You were not the worst one by far. I will tell you that. There was a lot of people doing It was driving me crazy.
Yeah, I try to get a little better at that, and I had a lot of notes, but it was more of this wasn't about just trying to say a piece. It was more of trying to react to what their questions were, and then I don't want to say rebuttal, but like just kind of clear up some of the misconceptions. It felt like more of a responsibility than trying to get a point out at that point. But yeah, it was fine. I mean, I live for that kind of stuff. I mean, my day job puts me in front of sometimes pretty interesting situations where people sometimes can get pretty heated, especially when you're talking like big proposals and stuff, and you have to do what they call oral presentations and stuff. So I mean, I've been doing that kind of stuff for a while. Big presentations, 1,200 plus people, like keynote stuff. So I'm pretty comfortable and confident if I know the information, but it's about, I don't know where they're going to go with it. And usually that question and answer live stream, this kind of experience is paramount for that kind of situation, right? Where we can kind of think on our feet and kind of get to our point. And we're just getting better at that. And anybody that's watching or has watched this or watches, the recap of this video again, if you feel like you can be a contributor to it, you're not going to start off perfect. It's okay. Like, just have your cycles, you'll get better at it. And that's what I always tell people, like, you'll get better at it. I mean, you'll feel more confident because you understand the information, and it just helps you out. But I think, we should do this. I think the next one I'll look. I think it really comes down to, I like to anchor it around a key event or something to that effect. So like, I think after the core dev meeting next week, we'll kind of play it by ear, depending on how they incorporate the information from the cat herder meeting into this one. And if it looks like it's a disaster or they completely misrepresented or something, maybe we'll get them to a group and try to invite one of them on. I mean, if it goes pretty smoothly and it's like, hey, we're considering a block reward, we're going to watch it. I mean, our work may be partially, at least started there, not done, but we'll play it by ear and see if we want to come back as a group. I'm trying like hell to get the HX cards, and I'd like to have kind of review with everybody if I can get a hold of some from NVIDIA, and kind of
I sent out a whole bunch of emails. I'm happy to trade those in and out too with you if we can grab them.
Yeah, I wanted to open them up. So I have some contacts back with Linus, Tech Tips, and Jake. That's with them. I'm trying to hit everybody. J2Sense, Gamers Nexus. I mean, I gave Gamers Nexus my Titan V back when those first came out, and that's why he was able to do 2 Titan Vs in one of his videos. Actually, if you Google Titan V BitsBeTrippin, you'll see it. Like Gamers Nexus's video actually comes up first. But I've tried to reach out to them and said, hey, if I get them, I'll send them to you. If you get them, I don't care if I'm remoting in. I'm afraid NVIDIA is going to do what NVIDIA does, and they're going to go and look at metrics, and they're going to send it to like a J2Sense of the world. And he's going to be like, what the hell do I do with this?
Well, they told me specifically that they aren't sending them because they're only party boards. So you need to be emailing ASUS and those guys.
I've sent a gigabyte. I have contacts that all of them. Yeah, and I'm trying to get them, and I have an open comm with Sapphire trying to get if it's going to be the 5500M or if it's the 5700M. I've heard some rumblings that they should hopefully have something announced in the first part of this March. I'm surprised they haven't came right out after NVIDIA did, to be honest with you. And just announced theirs, but again, I'm trying to get that too. So,
well, just FYI, I don't think they'll be sent. I don't think the GPUs are going to be sent to the content creators like J2Sense and stuff like that. Maybe Gamers Nexus, but those platforms, if you haven't seen their content lately, is not a really mining eccentric. That I don't think they have anything against it. It just seems like they're less likely to get a mining card shipped to them. At least some of them, not all of them.
Yeah, Linus and Jake and those guys will probably end up getting them just because they've covered mining several times. When Linus and them built their rig, I was talking to Jake through, I was helping them through Twitter.
Yeah,
so
I saw that.
Yeah, I was making sure that they got the miners running and all that. So I try to keep that connection open with them just because they have a lot more influence and, can find out where they're going to be at, how do we get them, that kind of thing. So I'm trying to get that. And then also it plays in this weird way back into what we were just talking about with Ethereum. So because that's going to be the next round of hash power if they go and drop 1 million of those. So we can start to measure what that output's going to look like to the network and that big hit. And we thought ASICs were going to be rough. If NVIDIA drops 1 million of those out on the system, it's going to get expensive. But yeah, so that'll be the next series of videos we can probably work together on.
I'd like to do one on ETH 2.0, and then if EIP 1559 is fully confirmed, what the final rollout looks like after whatever decisions are made, if there are any changes. But yeah.
Yep. And I got those three points behind me, and I'll bring those up next week at that dev meeting if they let me in it. Otherwise, I'll be in the dev chat. I'm in their Gitter, and the R&D. I mean, there's a few of you guys in the R&D channels too, and trying to talk to those guys directly just to see if we can get somebody on there. So I'll see if I can get Micah at a minimum set. He seemed very willing. So we'll see if maybe the next one we can get him in there.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, guys.
All right.
Well, I guess we'll wrap it up. If anybody has anything else, but and yeah, it was a good one. 2.5 hours, a long time, boys.
Yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up in my stream and call it a night.
Just a hearty thank you, gents. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yep, mine's offline. Awesome, dudes.
Awesome.
Let's get back to it.